Broadcasts of the City of Neenah Common Council meetings are produced by University Studios of the University of Wisconsin-Fox Valley. Neenah residents can get information about City Council meetings, City Committee meetings, meeting agendas, and other documents via the City website, www.neenahgov.org. Neenah residents can express their opinions about city issues or about these broadcasts by contacting the mayor's office, contacting their city alderman, or by completing the electronic feedback form on the city website, www.neenahgov.org. All public portions of the meetings are recorded in entirety and are not edited for playback.
I would like to call the meeting to order of the, we are here for the public hearing on the budget. I didn't grab. This is for the budget public hearing for Tuesday, November 19th, 2019 at 7 p.m. We are meeting special common council agenda for our 2020 budget hearing. The first item of business will be the roll call. The members will sign in as your name is, and answer the clerk as your name is called, please.
Alderman Boyette.
Here.
Bates.
Here.
Lang.
Here.
Lendrum.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Spellman. Steele.
Here.
Coons.
Here.
Stevenson.
Here.
There is a quorum present. 8 members are present. 1 member is absent. Alderman Spellman, I believe, may be at county board tonight. Be excused. And with a quorum present, if you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Council President Stevenson.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome to our residents who are here, and we have a lot of staff here, department heads, and thank you all for coming tonight to listen to the deliberations on a 2020 operating budget and the capital improvements budget also. Item number 1 will be a public hearing on the proposed 2020 operating budget and the 2020 capital improvements program budget. 2020 capital improvements program budget. There are some copies. If people, there's a few copies left that Mike has provided of the budget, which I believe is the executive summary, right? Correct? And on the agenda, there's also a synopsis of the budget attached to the agenda also. Okay, good. And then we have, Mike, why don't you explain what the 2 sheets are?
Sure. The first sheet that looks like this is, again, the mayor's final recommended budget and how it affects the tax levy and the tax rate. We just got the final assessed value in last week, so we have that all of those numbers for you. If the budget goes through, would be completely unchanged. This is exactly what you would have in terms of tax rate and tax levy. There are going to be some changes that will be made. Very likely they probably will not affect this because most of the changes appear to be related to the capital budget, which do not have a direct effect on the levy this year. So that is out in the back, as well as the second handout is all of the potential amendments to the budget that were identified either through the budget workshops that were held in the past 2 weeks or subsequently communicated to the council president in terms of aldermen who are contemplating making amendments to the budget. So those 2 sheets are also in the back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have some comments to make. I will wait till the item number 2, which is the discussion and consideration of the public hearing. At this point, then, I would open up the public hearing on the proposed 2020 operating budget and the 2020 capital improvements program budget. Is there anyone here who would like to address the council before we get going on any of the topics that are in the budget at this time? We just ask that you come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, just so we have it for the record, and welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Springmeyer, and I live on 270 Lakeshore Avenue. And as you know, the residents of Lakeshore Avenue unanimously support the street reconstruction project and on-street trail as proposed by Public Works in the current capital budget and endorsed by Mayor Crawford. We are opposed to the alternative of an off-street trail for which Alderman Bates will request funding for this evening. Here are our reasons why. Alderman Bates has asserted that there's a safety issue on Lakeshore, and this is simply not the case. According to police records, there have been no accidents on Lakeshore for at least 20 years, and according to the Department of Public Works traffic study from last summer, the cars on Lakeshore move at an average speed of 16.7 miles per hour. That probably makes Lakeshore one of the safest streets in Neenah. Secondly, an offshore trail will forever alter the ambiance and natural beauty of this iconic street. In some places, the grass between the road and the terrace is quite narrow, and the addition of an 8 to 10 foot wide trail would leave little or no green space at all. Installation of a trail will compromise and kill many of the old growth trees currently there. And if that isn't enough, we're battling a shoreline erosion problem on Lakeshore, which will be exacerbated if tree roots and the turf currently holding back the shoreline are replaced with an impervious trail. And finally, the off-street trail will cost taxpayers more money. Alderman Bates has indicated she's asking for an additional $70,000 to be added to the capital budget for the Lakeshore project, but that's only part of the expense. As Director Kaiser noted in his evaluation, an off-street trail will require ongoing maintenance expense, including snow removal, periodic repair, and resurfacing. And I'd like to remind you that the green space there is now maintained by the homeowners at no expense to the taxpayers, and we're happy to do it. Pedestrians who want to get closer to the water and look at the ducks or take pictures simply walk on the grass. So we, the residents of Lakeshore Avenue, ask for your thoughtful consideration of these factors, and we ask for your vote in support of an on-street trail as proposed in the current budget by Director Kaiser and Mayor Crawford. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Who else would like to address the council at this time? Come on up. Welcome.
Jim Dixon, Whittier Drive, 1338. I understand that there is to be consideration for sidewalks on Whittier Drive. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'd like to speak to. I don't have any answers, but I think it's time that someone came up with a plan for that area for sidewalks and not just patch here. I took a little tour around. The streets are 48 to 50 feet wide. I don't know, 48, 50 feet, yeah. And they have sidewalks, and then the grass between the sidewalk and the street would be 4 feet for the sidewalk and 10 feet for between. So that's another 14 feet on both sides. Well, you got 50 feet for the street, you got another 14. That is a lot of space. That's a lot of space that's taken away from the homeowners. Presently, 8 streets in our, well, we do, sidewalks don't belong in our neighborhood. That was a thing in the past. Now there are car after car after car takes their kids to school. We live there. I got an office upstairs. I look out. I think I see 2 kids a day walking down that street. Now, someone could say they walk down there. They don't walk down there because it's a traffic problem. There's no traffic problem. There is not that much. I would like to know, somebody could study how many cars go up and down there during the, we're talking only like a half hour in the morning and a half an hour in the afternoon, moving all that land and all that property and the money for half a hour in the morning and afternoon, basically what we're talking about. The opposite is true. You get a lot of adults walking there, and there are a lot of one-on-one, a lot of talking with each other, a lot of fellowship. It really is a good situation the way it now is. 8 streets have no sidewalks. Streets such as Whittier Drive, Edgewood, Emerson, Lowell, Bradford, Cambridge, Stratford. 3 streets have one side sidewalks. Interesting, the whole entrance to Mahler Park there just has that one sidewalk on one side. Kraft, Campbell, just the north half of it has one. You get into the school, Campbell got 2 sides. York, and then 3 streets have sidewalks on 2 sides, Yorkshire, Hawthorne, and the north end of Campbell. Some comments. Again, there needs to be some kind of a master plan. Our sidewalks in this day and age, mothers, fathers take their kids to school in cars. We had 5 kids. They went all the way up to junior high there, always, never problems. Kids, even with sidewalks, kids need to cross the street several times. You take from Whittier Drive, where the last 3 streets, going down toward the school, you have to go block across the street, go block across the street, go block across the street. So sidewalks don't eliminate crossing streets. Has anyone ever considered, you have bicycle paths, take 5-foot pedestrian path on the side, make some markers there, and cars stay off of that. I think there's a need for some real creativity. I think we're living in the past on sidewalks. And with the society and culture the way it is now, I think we need some more consideration. Not many kids walk or bike past Whittier Drive, 1338, where we are. And of course, Whittier Drive goes all the way around, goes down 3 blocks from us, but just not many kids. I look out that window, and there aren't many. I think this issue of 1 or 2 sidewalks, somebody said one sidewalk isn't enough, you have to have 2. I think that needs to be given a lot more study if this is considered of putting them in. Just some facts and background. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jim. Who else would like to address the council? Come on up. Oops.
Good evening. I'm Susan Derhog. I also live on Lakeshore Avenue, 260. And I just wanted to pass along a few comments. After hearing about the issue at hand, a former longtime Neenah resident sent a message to us saying the first thing that came to mind was the Joni Mitchell song with the following verse. They took all the trees and put them in a tree museum. They charged all the people $1.50 to see them. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. That is just so speaks to me. You're talking about paving Lakeshore with more trail, killing the trees, and even the trees that don't have to leave with this walking path will be compromised by the impervious surfaces that are over the roots of the existing trees. I think everybody that comes to our town, people I know that have moved to this area, to Appleton, come down and walk, and they just talk about how lovely it is. I would say the goal for the project would be to preserve all the trees and vegetation while minimizing the risk to the lake shore. I would encourage you to look. Any tree that's come down, a lot of the edge of that lake is being compromised. We're having issues with the riprap and erosion, and I think it's important we maintain this for all our citizens. So I hope you'll make a decision in that favor. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Welcome.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Joyce Argel. I live at 1350 Whittier Drive. Last Tuesday, my neighbor Steve Tyrion was in attendance at the workshop and made his opinion on the sidewalks on Whittier Drive known to you, but he's taken ill and can't be here tonight. He and I worked the last week on a petition gathering, signatures for a petition. He took his side of Whittier, which is the west side of Whittier. I took the east side, and we talked to every neighbor. I mean, he was really encouraged by what he heard. I think everyone on his street, and there's 9 homes, I believe, I might be wrong on this because he took that side of the street and he's not here to speak. Everyone but one signed his petition. I'm quite sure. And I had good response as well. Although one comment kept coming back to both of us was just that they weren't aware that this was being even considered at all. And I mentioned that I guess it's on the website somewhere if you wanted to find it. And everyone felt like that wasn't enough of a communication between the city and a homeowner that a sidewalk was being proposed. And so they wanted me to make that known, that is there some way a homeowner could be more aware of a project of this, I call it, of this magnitude, because it would take quite a bit of our front terrace. And on a street that, as Mr. Dixon mentioned, is quite wide. I don't have the actual dimensions of other average streets throughout the city, but Whittier is wide. And to think of 2 sidewalks on both sides, it just seems like a little over the top. I know, having raised children, the last thing I'd want is a child injured, or an adult, or a pet on our street. But I've lived there almost 12 years and raised 7 children and walked them to school, watched them bike to school. They often went down Craft and then went up Campbell to Coolidge. That was my experience, and I think it's a very safe street. And Mr. Tyrion, if he were here, he would comment on the landscaping on his part of the Whittier Drive. He would be impacted more than the rest of us, and he's, not able to speak, but he really enjoyed meeting neighbors and finding out their concerns as well. And they all signed this petition, and I'd like to submit it.
Okay. We can accept it and make it part of the record so that we'll make sure everyone gets a copy of that. Thank you very much. Who else would like to address the council? Anna?
Hi, I'm Carrie Ulrich. I live on North Park Avenue, 143, and our backyard abuts Lakeshore, so I'm bringing us back to Lakeshore again. We have lived there for almost 2 decades, and we feel really safe. The speed limit's 15 miles an hour, and for the most part, the cars do go that way. I'm out there walking all the time because I have a border collie. Can I put a picture up? Is that? I'm no techno.
That's Chris will turn it on. Director Hayes will come down unless you know how. Go ahead. You know how? You can start in IT next Monday, okay?
GIS?
Joe, I think we found an assistant.
Here's a picture that I snapped in June of this year, and it's one of the last days of school, and it's a picture. I didn't get my camera out fast enough. They walked by me, but it's middle schoolers that are with their classmates during school time, during one of the last days of school, enjoying the road. So school administrators feel it's safe. I also see cross-country teams running that street all the time. Another thing I wanted to bring up, kind of reiterate what Scott said. Just wanted to briefly talk about root systems of trees. They not only, so the most important part of the root systems, the feeders, are in the top, mostly 1 foot, even 6 to 10 inches of the soil. And they are really, they're sensitive to being compacted. If the soil gets compacted, then the roots can't extract oxygen out of the soil, and then the tree is compromised. So these feeder roots extend not only where the drip line is, which is this area, but actually in many trees 4 to 7 times the width of the tree beyond. So they extend quite a ways. So we would lose some trees under the proposal for an off-road trail right away, but we would also lose others as the years went by due to compromise. And this area is just too beautiful. Not only is the beauty at stake here, but once we start adding more impervious area where water can't soak in, you are at risk for erosion. So here's our beautiful lighthouse, but as you'll notice, there's really, there are no tree roots in this area due to what we built 50 years ago, we being the Neenah folks. And that is where we've got a big erosion problem. And so I'm really afraid, and many people are, that this will happen throughout the trail as we get rid of trees. That's pretty much all I have to say. Oh, we are also going to lose a lot of trees due to emerald ash borer, so keep that in mind as well. That's going to add to the tree loss.
Okay, thank you for coming.
I'll help anyone else out with this if they need it.
Thank you.
Dave Pop, 232.
Turn that your way there. There you go, Dave.
All
Thank you.
right. Dave Pop, 2324 Fiesta Court. I have 2 questions. The city of Neenah has a swimming beach at the Fresh Air Camp. It's really a beautiful beach located on Lake Winnebago, but there's a problem. The beach does not have a changing room or a restroom. You know, the money seems to get into the city's budget, but for some reason it seems to get removed every year. Costs are always going up. We all know that. Could we please get a restroom and changing area at the Fresh Air Park? That's what I'm asking for. And also the parking lot needs to be repaired. So that was in your budget and it got hacked. So my second thing I want to speak of, as long as everybody's speaking of sidewalks, I live over by Southview Park, and there's sidewalk and walking trails from Cecil Street all the way to Castle Oak. And then we get into from Castle Oak to Parkwood. It's like about 2-block area. There's no sidewalk. And there's not a area on the road that's marked off to be walked on. But then after you get past Parkwood, there's a roundabout, and then there's sidewalks that go in all directions. So my question is, if you don't want to put these sidewalks over at Whittier, we have a perfect spot over between Parkwood and Castle Oak that could use some upgrading. The kids do go from that edge of town over to Lakeview School, so there are children that are walking to school there. I'm done.
Thank you, David. Who else would like to address the council? Come on up, sir, and then Betsy. There you go.
My name is Robert Gare, 1311 Whittier, and my wife Betty is with me in the audience. And I apologize if I may repeat a few points in regard to Whittier Drive, but I have a hearing problem and I didn't catch all of the presentations. I believe I represent a number of the neighbors who think they should know from the city of Neenah why a sidewalk is in the budget, in the proposed budget. Did the request come from the Neenah Police, the Neenah Joint School District, somebody here on the council? But I think this is being handled very loosely, and I think the people on Whittier Drive ought to get more detail why we should spend money. This came up a number of years ago when one of our neighbors tried to push for a sidewalk there and went around with a petition, and I don't know how many yeas and nays, but it did not get very far. The other point I'd like to make is we have 4 daughters. One of them lives on South Park. I forget how many years, 5, 7 years ago, she had a sidewalk forced upon her. And the one person at the council, or at the council meeting, indicated that she wanted to sit on her front porch and watch people go by. So my daughter was one that paid the money and has a sidewalk. I've probably been over there 100 times since then, either helping with the lawn or something around the house. And I've only seen one person ever use that sidewalk to get probably from Bayview up to the pool, whatever the intention was, but it is not used. And I think the city ought to look and maybe take that as an example. I guess the only other point I'd like to make is the fact that the whole situation with traffic and children's safety in the Coolidge School area should be looked into. I mean, there's cars bumper to bumper, and there's kids let out, and they run between the cars to get across the street to get to school, because apparently there must be a new state law that you can't walk to school, I guess. But, and there's signs across the street on Hawthorne, and it's no parking during school hours. People park there. I've never seen a police car, the compliance officer, or anyone else ticket, tow, or do anything about controlling at least one point for safety of those children. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Bob. Welcome.
My name is Mary Ellen Robleski, and I live at 114 Lakeshore Avenue. And I've lived there for 28 years. Some things have changed, but other things have not changed. And some things haven't changed for hundreds of years. Can I pass these out, or would that be all right?
Sure.
Should I just talk while I'm doing it?
Just, yeah, bring them here and Bring him here, just bring him here, and then we'll
The mayor.
pass him down. Oh, Betsy, okay, yeah, give him to her. There you go.
There.
Awesome, thank you. That's a,
There you go.
there you go.
I'm Oh, I'm sorry. The picture I'm distributing to our council people was taken right near the Bergstrom Mahler Museum. The trees that you see have been there for hundreds of years, and when you look back on the Neenah Historical Society web pages and pictures, they will often have scenery that is identical to this. And so I speak not just for myself, who loves Lakeshore Avenue and considers myself a caretaker of that property for our whole community. I ask you for the past, to preserve the past, and also to save this area as a legacy to our children. And so the words are, in the end, our society will be defined not only by what we create, but by what we refuse to destroy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Apologize, I had Betsy in my mind for some reason. But excuse me. Who else would like to address the council during the public hearing portion? Come on up, sir.
Hi, I'm Ken Zwick, live at 730 Congress Place in Neenah. And 20 years ago, I came here to take a job with Kimberly Clark, and they showed me around the community, and they showed me all the highlights. They showed me the Fox River in Appleton, and they showed me Smith Park in Menasha, and then they showed me Kimberly Point in Neenah, which I think everybody here would agree is a real gem. It's an incredible place, a beautiful place, and it was the highlight of the whole trip because, you know, that's a place with just an unobstructed view of the lake, which you do not get anywhere else in the entire Fox Cities. It's an amazing place with flocks of birds in the spring and the fall, sun rises every morning, ice, beautiful ice shoves. I mean, probably not so beautiful when they're threatening your house, but lots of, you know, just fantastic things, and boat races in the summer. Something for every season, something just absolutely beautiful to see. And that's something that sold us on this community. That's why we moved to Neenah and have been here for 20 years. Neenah's made a lot of great improvements over those 20 years. So we've had lots of bike lanes, we've had Shattuck Park, we've had Loop the Little Lake, we've had just a lot of parks and improvements, and I really appreciate that. But one thing that has not been improved or not been changed has been that access to Kimberly Point or that Lakeshore Avenue. And I was really excited when I saw the plans that the city planner had made showing this path along the lake, which was going to give everybody access to get right up next to the lake, which is exactly where you want to be. And I was really excited, and I came to the planning meeting, and I was just to hear about that. And I was so impressed with the city planner and the work that had gone into it and how they had managed to design this path so it would avoid killing trees and hurting things. So it was like just a beautiful design. And I was so disappointed to see that taken out of the budget. And I'm really encouraged and glad to see that some people are thinking about putting that back in. So, you know, why do we want this? Well, you know, it attracts people like me to the community. I think that's a great thing to have young people come in and be part of the community. It would be delightful for the 25,000 residents of the city that don't get to be along the lake, don't get to live on the lake right now, that they could get right up next to the lake, and their children and elderly people could bike and walk and be right up against the lake without fear of the cars that are there. Maybe there have been no accidents, but it certainly is something that's always in the back of your mind that you have to be right next to the cars as you're walking on that road. And finally, it would enhance the beauty of the lakeshore. to have this meandering path. If you look at the designs, it's a beautiful thing, so much more attractive than having a wide roadway with a painted line on it that's just going to look like a parking lot. Have a narrower roadway with this beautiful meandering path to really enhance the beauty. And the designs that save the trees, I think, is a fantastic addition. So I really appreciated the work and thought that went into all the options that were proposed, but I really want to encourage putting the $70,000 back in to get that gem of an option with the path along the lake. So thank you very much, and I hope that you take the advantage of this unique opportunity, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really give something to the community, and so they can get right up close to the lakeshore, our citizens of Neenah's lakeshore, and we deserve this. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else like to comment?
Edwin Caesar, 469 Lowell Place. Just something to mention about the sidewalks on Whittier. I'm pretty unprepared. I didn't anticipate on saying anything, so bear with me. Just moved here about 3 months ago or so. So facing some new sidewalk right on the side of my house is not ideal. I would like to second the whole bike lane thing. I work from home. I got my office right by the window so I can see out of it, see the traffic. More bikers than anything. So bike paths would probably be suitable for that, I would imagine. I used to live in Appleton. Sidewalks everywhere. Pretty tight roads too, so I guess I could see the justification for the sidewalks. But people did walk on the grass and in the middle of the road half the time anyway, so. But just wanted to put my 2 cents in there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Neenah. Anyone else like to make a comment?
Good evening. I'm Dan McIntosh, and we've lived at 234 Lakeshore for 22 years. In 2011, when Lakeshore Avenue's reconstruction was last debated, area neighbors initiated a website called Citizens to Preserve the Neenah Lakeshore. Over 500 comments were posted to this website in support of an on-road as opposed to an off-road trail. These comments came from residents of Neenah, the Fox Valley, and beyond. In addition, some 800 petitions signed by Neenah citizens were in favor of an on-road trail. Copies of these comments and petitions have been provided to the Common Council. Winnebago County and the DNR both have regulations that restrict new installation of impervious surfaces within 300 feet of water. The regulations define impervious surfaces as sidewalks, gravel pads, driveways, and other areas that restrict precipitation from infiltrating into the ground. Whether Neenah adopts these regulations or not, we can all agree that the addition of more impervious surface along the water both is ill-advised and not a good idea. Installing an expensive, impervious 10-foot off-road trail will add more than 13,000 square feet of non-vegetative hard surface, replacing the appealing green space. Area residents want to preserve the natural look of Lakeshore Avenue, which Mr. Wick so eloquently described, and not see it destroyed by unnecessarily removing or damaging trees or vegetation. Ideally, we residents would prefer keeping the roadbed at its current 20-foot width without curb and gutter. This option would retain somewhat the rural and quiet character of the roadway while letting the vegetated green space naturally absorb the runoff. One argument has been made for an off-road trail that it will bring pedestrians closer to the water. It should be noted that the proposed on-road trail on Lakeshore Avenue will actually be closer to the water than the existing off-road trail through nearby Riverside Park, where green space and trees along the water have been preserved. Regarding safety, historically, the absence of any police reports confirm that Lakeshore Avenue is safe without a marked pedestrian lane. You've heard a few unofficial anecdotal stories in the past about isolated unsafe conditions on Lakeshore Avenue. These stories are sometimes used to lobby for an off-road trail, but the actual record does not reflect these alleged incidents. Recently, the lowered speed limit and the slower speed of traffic have made the roadway even safer for pedestrians. The budget calls for the economical reconstruction of Lakeshore Avenue via a slightly wider roadway to accommodate a marked on-road lane, preserving most of the natural and scenic beauty of the lakeshore. While not ideal from our perspective, it represents the best offered solution and is proposed in Mayor Coffert's budget. For these reasons, we unanimously support the proposed marked on-road trail solution for Lakeshore Avenue, and we urge you to vote for the marked on-road trail as called for in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else like to address the council? Welcome, Ned.
My name is Ned Hughes. I live at 1140 Manor Drive, number 104 here in Neenah. I'm a longtime Neenah resident. I've been here since the early 1990s. I'm here tonight to support the proposed Jewelers Park Drive Trail. In 2015, as the race director for the annual St. Joe's 5K Run Walk, in 2015 I had to find a new city and venue for the annual St. Joe's 5K Run Walk, which is held here in Neenah in October each year. Excuse me. In 2015, in moving to Neenah and a new headquarters venue, the Bridgewood Resort Hotel and Conference Center, and from that, developing a 5K Run Walk course in the neighborhood area of the Bridgewood Resort Hotel and Conference Center for the St. Joe. Now, in 2015, in developing the 5K course and the Run Walk event itself, I was involved with working with businesses that are in the corridor of the 5K Run Walk Trail, and what we ended up with was having part of the 5K Run Walk course go down Jewelers Park Drive, starting just south of the intersection of Cameron Way and Jewelers Park Drive, and then going south down to Harrison Street. Well, long story short here, what happened in the process here in developing the route was, along with working with the city in holding the annual St. Joe's 5K Run Walk here in its new home, working with our headquarters venue, we were required to find additional parking locations for people that were going to run or walk the 5K, and also volunteer with the event, because the event is 100% volunteer driven. That being said, so I started working with businesses along Jewelers Park Drive, specifically Jewelers Mutual Insurance Company at the time, and also Plexus Corporation. They had large parking lots available that would accommodate our event, and we could incorporate free shuttle bus service utilizing Jewelers Park Drive utilizing Jewelers Park Drive businesses, Jewelers Mutual Insurance Company, and also the Plexus Corporation building. So with my interaction with Jewelers Mutual and also with Plexus over time, in understanding, if you will, the neighborhood, I come to find out that, okay, there's no sidewalk or there's no trail along Jewelers Park Drive from West Cecil Street down to Harrison Street. People that want to access businesses, pedestrian people that want to access those commercial businesses along Jewelers Park Drive, I mean, they have to walk on the street. They have to walk on Jewelers Park Drive. And you have a major employer in Jewelers Mutual Insurance Company now called Jewelers Mutual Group that their employees in being able to get to the Bridgewood Resort Hotel and Conference Center, that business complex, that campus of businesses, if you will. Also, vendors that do business with both Plexus and Jewelers Mutual Insurance Company, being able to access the Bridgewood Resort Hotel and Conference Center businesses. You had, so again, people, pedestrians, if you were going to have to walk, you had to walk on Jewelers Park Drive. And so it became apparent to me that are two things that got back to me over time, over the last 5 years, and that's that you have employees of these commercial businesses that if they're going to walk, they have to use Jewelers Park Drive. And if they need to catch a bus, there's no bus stops on Jewelers Park Drive to accommodate any of the employees that work in businesses along there. Number one. Number two, you have a safety issue with, again, no off-road sidewalk or trail along Jewelers Park Drive, that 1 mile stretch from West Cecil Street down to Harrison Street. So I'm here tonight to support the building of the proposed off-road Jewelers Park Trail, approximately a 1 mile trail that would terminate at West Cecil Street and then go south all the way down and connect with Harrison Street. The other part of the other thing I wanted to say was that if this trail is built, that you will, you're positioning from an economic standpoint, if you will, in terms of employee retention, a major employer like Jewelers Mutual Group that employs several hundred employees. Their world global headquarters is here in Neenah. And so, from a standpoint of employee retention, quality of life, and again, it makes a lot of sense to get this proposed trail built and built as soon as possible. The other thing that, from a value add standpoint, if this trail is built, it will, if you will, be a trail that will connect with two other trails. You will have, on the south end, you will have a connection at Harrison Street and Jewelers Park Drive. There'll be a connection with the Harrison Street, the existing Harrison Street trail. And then on the north end, of Jewelers Park Drive, you'll have a connection that will take place with the existing Bridgewood Trail. And so, in effect, in the end, with the Jewelers Park Trail built, you're going to end up with a nice loop trail, again, a smaller version of Loop the Little Lake Trail. So, again, I'm here tonight to support the project, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ned. Anyone else like to address council? All right. Thank you all for your comments. I will close the public hearing on the budget? Last call, anyone? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. And we will move on to item number 2, which is discussion and consideration of the public hearing and other matters relating to the 2020 operating budget and the capital improvement budget. Before we get into the actual items that council members have, I would like just to take a couple minutes here to give you my overviews as though, see, this is the mayor's executive budget. I would like to, before I do start that, there's probably a couple items, there were couple questions that were brought up here that may not get addressed during the course of the budget proceedings. So I just wanted to comment that with regards to any sidewalk projects and that, a few years ago, the council did a sidewalk criteria policy, and there's a ranking system on sidewalks. We also have a 5-year plan. There's a 5-year plan that every year is updated. It's not cast in stone, but it's a 5-year plan on where we are going with streets, where we are going with capital expenditures, sidewalks, and this has been in the 5-year plan. I understand that a lot of people don't sit at home and read the 5-year plan. So I get that. There's been some suggestions just recently, and I'm going to take them to heart, that for the upcoming future, that we maybe utilize the newsletter that we send out quarterly to let people know after the CIP is approved in April, that I use maybe the June or the August newsletter to let people know that maybe the next year's streets that are coming, next year's sidewalks that are coming, not necessarily cast in stone, but that at least I will tell you a lot more people read the newsletter than they do the 5-year plan. Because I have a lot of people who tell me they enjoy getting the newsletter that these folks work real hard on, and myself and Gretchen Robb are, from the Director of Libraries, put together. So we're going to take that to heart. With regards to Fresh Air Camp, I don't know if that'll come up tonight, but I do want to just tell David that that was requested. Both Mike Kading and I reached out to the town of Neenah and the county to ask if they would be a participant in the necessary items that need some repair. It is a city-owned facility, but there are a lot of county residents that use it. There's a lot of town residents that use it. And I talk all the time about regionalization and the need to work together on these projects that improve, and impact all of our residents, because the borders out there, nobody knows, some people don't know if they're in the town or the city. So unfortunately this year, because of priorities, it didn't make the, my cut, and we had to take them out. I got commitments from both the county and the town to sit down and talk about the future of that and how that they can help us. So I presume hopefully next year we will be looking at improving that Fresh Air Camp Park, because you know what, when I was a kid, that's where we rode our bike, that's where we went swimming a lot, and I think it's a hidden gem, and if we can improve it, that'll be great. But it just, unfortunately, it's not that I'm against it, it's that it didn't make the dollars didn't fit this year. But restrooms are very important. Mike Kading put them in to have some vault restrooms and a changing area. I think that would be a huge improvement in itself. So those are the two things that I don't know if they'll come up. So I just wanted to talk about that. And then I want to take 5 minutes here just to talk about the budget, since it is the mayor's executive budget, and then the council can do their work. I do want to say the council, I appreciate the fact they worked very hard on this. They have about 16 hours, 4 nights of budget workshops. I presume they have many hours sitting at home reading this document, 359 pages of documents. I know they've been in contact with department heads asking questions and finding out the answers. So I just do want to tell you that the council has put their time in on this. This entire process starts back in about early July, when Mike and I tell the department heads for the 4th of July, they get to start the budget process, and they're all really excited about that. So it goes way back then to July, and they develop their lists. I know the department heads are very, very careful about what they request, and they take their job very serious, knowing that the limitations that are put on by myself, by the state of Wisconsin, and by the taxpayers' ability to pay. So I want to tell you that they do so this is a long process, and everyone does a good job. And you can tell there's a few issues tonight that we still have to hammer out. But for the most part, the good news is 90% of this document stays intact, and I appreciate that. And it's because of a lot of hard work that people put in. So I don't like to cut back. I want to invest in the future. That's really important for this community. And I believe strongly in this community that we call Neenah, and the future is very, very bright. So with that, I'm just going to take a moment or two to give you the highlights of the 2020 budget as outlined in my my letter with regards to the budget. That is in the budget. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'm going to give you some highlights. So dear President Stevenson and honorable council members and the citizens of Neenah, it is my pleasure to present to you my 6th budget, the 2020 operating capital improvement budget. When I got done with this, I said to myself, mission accomplished. I always used to watch that show because this was a challenging budget. We are faced with numerous challenges due to strict levy limits imposed by the state and 0 increases in state revenue aid. I like to tease people, and I've told them many times, coming from the state of Wisconsin, being one of the legislators who voted for levy limits and expenditure restraint and those types of programs, I wish I would have known I was going to run for mayor, because then I might have voted differently back then. But we're dealt the hand that we have, and we have successfully achieved those goals of meeting the limits that the state sets forward. The state-imposed allowable levy increase is tied to our new net construction increase. So that was under approximately $26.3 million this year. That's a lot of new construction, but it equated to 1.19%. And so that left us, after the formula, we had about $600,000 that we could increase in our $25 million budget. So with regards to operating. So in order to qualify for state levy limits and expenditure restraint program, we're under some limitations. So while the overall economy is doing very well, and the economy in the city of Neenah is doing extremely well, the state continues to collect additional sales tax, income tax, and corporate tax. That growth isn't getting back to us through shared revenue and other dollars that the state has. Most of those dollars are being sent to the school district and also to medical assistance and other state programs. Director Easker shared with me a couple of statistics. In 1983, the state funded over 45% of our budget through shared revenue, and this year that number is about 8%. As recently as 2003, the city received over $3 million in shared revenue and expenditure restraint payments from the state. And the estimate for this year, we now have the numbers, from those same sources is $2,090,000, a drop of almost $1 million during that period. So the school aid formula continues to get increases, which helps property tax relief and also educates our children, along with a lot of money going to medical assistance. So more than ever before, it's becoming more difficult and clear that sustaining the number of services that we have and the number of core services that we provide our citizens is going to become more difficult over the future. So while those things were daunting, we were up to the task, and I'm presenting a budget that I think is fiscally responsible, has about a 1.3% increase in spending. And So we're going to continue on those that road. So this budget's going to move forward with numerous new buildings, new construction projects that are going to continue to pay dividends down the road and create a new tax base and more jobs for our citizens. We were very excited this past week to learn that we're going to refill the towers downtown with about 300 jobs that are coming to Neenah from ThedaCare. And everything is contingent on growing our tax base and economic development. And this council has been extremely supportive of spending dollars for the future that is going to do just that, and that's going to increase our tax base. We are somewhat limited by our neighbors, the ability to grow, to expand our borders, the ability of annexations, and that is not what it used to be. I believe we have less than 20 or 30 buildable lots in the city. So that is a challenge that we have to continue to meet and to try and supply a housing demand in the city. We've been fortunate to have some great projects, the Pendleton Street project, apartments that have gone up and actually have a waiting list. And we've had some construction on the west side, but we've had a lot of other really tremendous projects in the downtown area that have brought a lot of tax base to our community. So we have some goals, and I can tell you that this budget, we stayed within the levy limits. We kept the expenditure increases within the range to qualify for the expenditure restraint program, and we continue to try and be concerned about how much we borrow. Regarding the operating budget, our department heads identified needs of just over $26.2 million for 2020. In this budget, I'm requesting a reduction from the request of almost $520,000, leaving a final expenditure budget of just over $25.7 million. That's supported by a tax levy of just less than $14 million, and that includes debt service and TIF. The final proposed levy is just over $19.1 million, an increase of just over $207,000 or 1.1%. This year, the budget impact on taxpayers is unique in that all taxpayers received a new property assessment as part of the citywide reevaluation. And with the reevaluation, the average property assessment went up due to the market conditions, approximately 20%. So the estimated total city assessment value went up 18.7%, and that led to almost a correlating decrease in the assessed tax rate. So as proposed, and these numbers are slightly different, but as proposed, the final estimated assessed tax rate for property owners will go down approximately $1.45. We'll go down, Mike gave me the new numbers just before we came in, it will go down to $1.45 to $8.19 per $1,000 of assessed valuation. So as property values go up, the assessed value,
Mill rate.
the mill rate goes down. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. So, so for the property owner whose assessed value went up approximately an average of 20%, this translates into an increase in property taxes for city purposes of about 2.1%. So the city's financial picture continues to improve while following all those things that we have to do with the state of Wisconsin, but we will continue our work on that we've started. We expect an 8% increase in our health care costs this year. That's approximately about $175,000. The city has a city health clinic, which is helping keep costs down, and our former HR director and our current HR director, Lindsay, are doing a great job of working to control our health care costs. In the capital projects portion of the document, we will attain the goal of keeping our borrowing below $10 million. That's important so that we can meet the bank qualified lending limits. The original requests from departments that they identified for borrowing was about $11.7 million. So I had to lower that by over $1.1 million to $10.6 million in total capital spending. And then to help fund those projects, I'm proposing a borrowing of about $9.97 million, which is just under the $10 million bank qualified limits. We were able to stay under that $10 million borrowing by utilizing over $235,000 in TIF 7 reserves and $200,000 of stormwater reserves, leaving both still with healthy balances. And I wouldn't use those reserves if we didn't, if we in any way were jeopardizing the future balances. This council and myself, I believe we have done a great job of establishing great rainy day funds and healthy balances that in times like this, we can utilize those dollars to help keep the costs down. So I believe strongly that keeping up with maintenance of roads, buildings, equipment, and infrastructure is really important for the future. If we just continue to defer these costs, they always end up costing more down the road. And that I would say the good news is that at the end of 2019, our debt load as a percent of our statutory limit will be 42.6%, down from 51.8% when I was first elected mayor. Our total debt, including stormwater revenue and CDA lease revenue bonds, has decreased from 76.8% down to 57.9% in that same amount of time. So some of the other things, because we've been good stewards of your dollars, I've included dollars for future economic development opportunities. $500,000 is recommended for TIF 8 budget to bring a high-value public-private partnership investment to the downtown district. And this will meet our objectives of an increment valuation increase of over $4 million project for that area. TIF 10, I'm recommending additional dollars for continued land assemblage for parking, redevelopment, or project assistance. And in TIF 7, $200,000, which would be assembled with a private contribution and a state grant, hopefully, for a joint effort for a multi-use trail from Cecil Street to Harrison Street. That is a trail that Ned Hughes had talked about. In January, we're going to bring together a subcommittee that I talked about earlier this year in April, because we have some big ticket projects on the burner for the future. So we're going to look at how we can be creative and how we can fund those projects in the future. So I mentioned the Pendleton apartment project. That's continuing. When completed, that's about a $14.4 million valuation project. Starting soon will be the Coral Court townhouses on Winneconne Avenue by Kruger's Hardware. They're moving dirt as we speak. And we're also looking at additional land developments for housing stock on the west side of the city. So every day, our departments are working hard. I just want to highlight a couple of them. Our Public Works Department, the new trucks that this council and the community supported are working well. And so we're going throughout the city, and they're doing the job that we expected to, and hopefully we're saving a little bit of money there. I do want to point out, this is off script, the leaf pickup will continue. The biggest question I'm getting right now is about leaf pickup. So we will continue picking up leaves until the snow really hits, and we'll have to put them on, the snow plows on. Our public safety departments, our police, fire services, they are making a big difference in this community. And when citizens need emergency services, they are getting professional, courteous help, and these folks are committed to protecting property and saving lives. The police department, Chief Olson, our command staff, are doing great things to change the culture in this community and provide excellent service. And Neenah Menasha Fire Rescue, they respond daily to dozens of EMS calls, and they protect our homes and our businesses. The rest of our departments, I can tell you, each and every day they amaze me with the challenges that they face, and that they come up with creative solutions that save taxpayers money. We're going to continue with the aggressive road improvement schedule, 10 projects on the table for next year, and that does include the reconstruction of Lakeshore Avenue along Lake Winnebago. With regards to Lakeshore Avenue, I have included the dollars necessary for the reconstruction with a road that's wide enough to include a walking, biking, and pedestrian trail. I've included dollars in this budget for a dog park. One of the biggest things, whether I go to the grocery store, whether I go to church, is people want to have some sort of dog park. I've checked with Winnebago County. There are no dollars in their budget this year for a dog park. A few years ago, Park and Rec sent a survey out with regards to a dog park. This was in 2014, I believe, and it was the third highest identified need in the city. So I'd like to keep those dollars in there if at all possible. This budget will also lower a fee, and we don't do that very often. But we are going to lower the recycling fee from $40 to $37. It's a $3 decrease. Technology IS services are continuing. We're beginning to look at smart cities initiatives and ways that we can look at what other communities are doing to save dollars and to be more innovative in how we provide services. Our lean concept training, all of our employees are lean trained, and they all go through the lean concept procedures to try and find better ways to do things that we have done for many years and see if there's improvements that can be made. Our employees, this budget provides an average 2.25% wage increase, average, depending upon their performance reviews. We just completed a salary plan review by an outside consultant, and we have made great strides in improving our salary structure and being competitive throughout the Fox Valley. So future budgets are going to require fresh, new ideas, finding ways to provide services that are even more efficient, and we will continue to do that. So this budget that we're going to work on in a few minutes here is a collection of my priorities as our elected leaders, working with our staff and our council. I try to listen to the constituents, and I listen to the council members, and many of them have come in and worked with me or called me. I've had conversations with numerous council members throughout this process, along with the council president, to try and make this budget even better. I'm confident that tonight, some of the discussions that you're going to hear with regards to items that have come up through the budget workshop, they are meant to improve the project, the product, and we'll see where they go, and we'll talk about them. So I applaud our department heads for carefully scrutinizing the requests, because they always keep the taxpayers in mind. I especially want to just say a quick thank you to Mike Easker, our finance director, Deb Calabrese, and Andy Call, and the staff in the finance for helping me put this document together. So I love this city. We are on track for great things, and thank you all very, very much, and we'll go through the document and see what changes we can have to improve the document. Okay. So thank you very much for listening to that. So the first item Jim would like us to suggest to do, it would be to a motion and a second to accept and place on file the two documents that we received tonight, this document and the neighborhood petition for Whittier Drive.
Move to accept both documents. I did that. Machine. Okay. So I'll make a motion to accept the documents that the council received in the public forum for the 2020 operating budget.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept and place on file the two documents that were presented for the council tonight. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? There unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Unanimous consent to accepting these and placing them on file. Seeing no objection, that's ordered. Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we get started? Okay. So with that, item number A is consideration of resolution number 2019-23 authorizing the Neenah Menasha Fire Rescue budget to exceed the local levy limits pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute Section, it's carried out here, and permitting the carry forward of 2019 unused levy limits to the 2020 operating budget pursuant to Wisconsin statutes.
I move for the adoption of resolution 2019-23.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to support the resolution number 2019-23. Mike, you want to just tell people what we're doing here?
Sure. As the mayor mentioned, as part of the operating budget, the state of Wisconsin does provide very strict levy limits that are a product of the amount of growth that the city enjoys on a year-to-year basis with regard to property values. New construction, not reassessment. The state also has understood that communities that cooperate with each other with regard to services, such as police and fire, specifically with fire, need to have some assurances that the levy limit law will not preclude them or prevent them from entering into these types of agreements. Since when you're part of a consolidated department, you sometimes don't have direct control over exactly how much you're being charged to levy for the service. Consequently, we do have the law that allows us to exempt up to an amount of the levy that is being increased for the fire rescue services that is being charged by the joint department. And that is what we are doing. We are exempting exactly $100,000 of those charges from the levy limit law as allowed by law.
Okay. Any comments or questions by council? All right, seeing none, there's a motion and a second to support resolution number 2019-23. All in favor, vote aye. All, pardon?
Don't we put the amendments in first?
This is not the budget.
This is not. This is
item
just the
2A.
exemption
The
of the Neenah Menasha Fire levy. Okay. Anyone else? All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes 8-0.
Mayor?
Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you. So the people watching at home and the people in the crowd understand the methodology that we're going to use tonight to consider the 2020 operating budget. I'm going to make a motion to approve resolution 2019-24, which would adopt the 2020 operating budget and the 2020 capital improvements plan that was presented to the council from the mayor. I'm assuming that'll get a second, and then from that point, we will entertain motions to amend that motion or that budget.
Second.
So I will make a motion to approve the resolution 2019-24, the 2020 operating and capital improvement plans for 2020 by Mayor Crawford.
All right. Alderman Stevenson moves, seconded by Alderman Bates. So that question is now on the table.
And we're discussing.
Pardon?
And we're discussing.
Yes. Question and discussion, and we have a if we want to go in this order, or if someone, how would you like to handle that? But we have a list of potential amendments that came to us from during the budget workshops. Alderman Stevenson, as council president, and Director Easker have kind of put those together, and that does not preclude aldermen from bringing up items that are not on this list tonight. And so, whoever like to add? Director Easker, go ahead.
Sure. I know in the past there's always been sort of a running total of things that we are keeping track of as this goes on. Would you like me to give some of those numbers now? Would you like me to hang on?
That'd be a good idea. I was going to ask you to do that before we start. So because we are kind of close to the limits, it's important that we don't go over those limits during this budget process now. So we usually ask Director Iska to keep a running total for us of minuses and pluses so that at the end, we still qualify for state levy limits and also expenditure rate in the other programs. So go ahead.
Real quickly, the city, as presented by the mayor, would levy $19,102,026, leading to an assessed tax rate of $8.1936. The operating budget still has $8,960 of unused levy limit and $2,506 of expenditure restraint expenditures still allowed in the general fund above what we have budgeted. The city also has...
Could you give that number again?
$2,506.
That's expenditure restraint.
Right.
And the 8,900?
8,960 for the unused levy limit.
Thank you.
The city is currently $35,870 under the $10 million bank qualified limit that we are using as our benchmark.
One more time.
$35,870.
Thank you.
City is currently prepared to use $200,000 of general fund reserves and $165,000 from our benefit accrual fund to offset the operating budget. So those are the numbers as we begin.
I didn't go to the max, but I didn't leave you.
Yeah.
So sorry about that, but it was a challenge, and through this process, there are going to be, I presume, a few motions that are going to save us money, and a few motions that may spend us. At the end of the day, though, there are some numbers that we want to ensure that we're at, so that we meet those requirements the state puts forward. So with that, I'm going to call on Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to remove $65,000 from the capital budget for sidewalks on Whittier Drive. There was a memo that was sent out yesterday afternoon at 3:45 from Director Kaiser stating that the ranking for Whittier Drive was incorrect when it was presented, and the length of the sidewalks was incorrect. And due to those factors and the fact that we have not alerted our citizens on Whittier Drive, I would like to remove it from this year's budget.
There's a motion by Alderman Erickson. Is there a second?
Second.
A second.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, use your buttons, please. There you go. Alderman Erickson moves, seconded by Alderman Lundrum.
Yeah.
That motion is now open for discussion. Anyone like to talk on that motion? Alderman Erickson?
Thank you, Mayor. I was alerted yesterday by this memo. I was in favor of the sidewalk criteria being done. And Whittier now is ranked number 3 in the criteria, not number 1, not number 2. And yet it came up first, as well as the first one was South Park. The second one is Plummer Court, and then it was Whittier. And then when we had our sidewalk discussion a few years ago in regards to Forest Manor sidewalks, we were told that sidewalks, it made sense to have sidewalks on one side of the street. This proposal comes forth with sidewalks on both sides of the street. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think it's fair to the citizens on Whittier Drive to, particularly since the information is incorrect, to have it put forth. So I'd like to remove it at this time and save that money for future projects.
All right, Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm saddened by our conversation about sidewalks. It's been an ongoing issue for years. We've debated it in depth. We had a best practices from our engineering and community works, but public works, but we want to go further and create this whole criteria, because every time we bring up a sidewalk, every single time, what happens is the people it affects show up, say, we haven't looked at it close enough, we haven't considered it enough, even though we've considered it quite a bit, but basically they don't want it in front of their house. They want it, but the majority of people have sidewalks in the city. Majority of people do. To me, it's a community thing. I expect people to mow their lawn. I expect them to be okay with having a sidewalk put in there, and they go out and shovel it like the rest of us do. It's what we do in a community. It's what we do in the city. If you don't want sidewalks, there's plenty of town out there. You can go live and not have sidewalks and be out there and whatever you want. But in a city, we come together. I've gotten involved in the city in so many different ways because it's very important to me, sense of community. And what we're asking our elderly, our children to walk in the gutter because we don't want the sidewalk in. And what we think is our yard, when it's not really our yard at all, it's right of way, and we don't own it anymore, then I own mine and I have a sidewalk there. It just saddens me that we continue this conversation. I can go into the details. First of all, best practice is to have the sidewalk on both sides, from engineering, from national studies, from all those kinds of things. This isn't something we just throw out there. This is something that's been widely researched, widely debated year after year after year. And there's mentioning about how there's sidewalks in some parts. Because in new developments, we put sidewalks in as standard. You see it everywhere in Liberty Heights and everything else. The sidewalks just go in. If we put them in right away, they go in. If you wait a while, people don't like change. And once you get something for a while, people just don't want that change at all, and they'll come out and give us the stories and tell us about all kinds of different things. But it's all emotion. They don't want the change. I get it, but it just. And I'm not looking for a big battle here. We battled this enough. Vote for it, don't for it. I don't care. At some point, we just need to move on. I don't want to spend forever on sidewalks. New criteria, new something. We spend hours and hours of engineering that should be spent on other things to deal with people's issues with sidewalks not wanting them in front of their house. They can always point to someplace else they should go. They should go over here, they should go over there, but not in front of my house. It just saddens me that that's where we're at in a community that comes together so many ways. Again, I get it that people don't want them in front of their house. I get it they don't want to shovel them. I get all those different things. But again, majority of people have them in front of them, and it's a community, walkable neighborhoods, all those kind of things, which are all the rage and have been for the last decade. We're a little bit behind at times. It's just sad. I'm not looking for any more research or anything else. We either vote for things, don't vote for them, and let's just move on. But I'm sad.
Anyone else on this topic? On the motion? Alderman Erickson?
I have a question. Since that memo came out at 3:45 yesterday, Jerry, you had mentioned that you wanted to include sidewalks on Whittier through Mahler Boulevard. Have you now amended the budget to do that, or is that not in the budget? What is your plan for that? Because that came out at 3:45 yesterday.
Sure. The item listed in the budget is consistent with the sidewalk and trails map. What in the budget number is good for the project from Kraft to Hawthorne. The mapping down to Mahler Boulevard was done during the criteria evaluation. It didn't play a role in establishing the budget number or the endpoints of the project as it's listed in the budget book.
So you're not going to include that in this budget? Whittier to Mahler Boulevard, is that correct?
No, my intent would be to leave the project as it's stated in the budget from Hawthorne to Kraft.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Alderman Lane.
I guess I'm a little bit confused about the memo in the sense that if Whittier is now third in priority behind South Park and Plummer, I think we knew South Park was part of the consideration for this coming year, but why was that removed and Whittier was included, and now we have Plummer as an even higher priority? Shouldn't we potentially be addressing those in this year's budget if we're actually being consistent with what our priorities are and how we're ordering them based on set criteria? And study.
You're
Why
asking-
did we not?
You're asking Director Kaiser that, I presume, right?
Yes.
As I stated in my note from the 15th, my request was for both South Park and Whittier Drive to be included in the 2020 capital budget. South Park Avenue, it's a longer stretch of road. It's a higher cost project. It didn't make the cut through the budget evaluation.
So in essence, the mayor removed it, even though it was a higher priority than Whittier? I'm confused, I guess, on that.
That would be accurate.
And then now that we have the added information that Plummer is a higher priority than Whittier, do we go back to the drawing board and say we need to recreate this? I guess it's just such late information and it's a little concerning.
Go ahead. Jerry.
Go ahead. Well, I guess my expectation going forward in capital improvement request will be to include sidewalk installations in the order that they were presented or that they calculated out in the scoring criteria. If a project gets removed for any particular reason, that project will be requested again in a subsequent year. So we don't lose track of projects as we go along.
If I may, I just they even got me confused here, so the only request I remember was Whittier, and in the book so if South Park was in, then it would have the amount of dollars, and I would have put 0. I can't remember.
In the 19 to 23 5-year plan, South Park was requested for 2020, in addition to Whittier Drive. When I made my proposals for this current budget, I just carry forward whatever got approved in the 19 to 23 CIP.
Okay. Somehow it just didn't get in the
Well, I think what Jerry's saying is it was in the CIP for 2020.
Okay.
But the 2019 through 23 plan took it out. Therefore, as he was carrying forward the CIP plan to 2020, once it was taken out, he did not re-ask for it again.
Okay.
Correct?
That's fair.
Correct.
All right, that's fair. I would just say this. Council knows, we as Alderman Coons pointed out, we spend an awful lot of time on sidewalks. I was trying to respect the council's desire to have a sidewalk criteria program. You folks spent a lot of time on that sidewalk criteria program. I was trying also to make the numbers work in this budget. And so Whittier was requested. I agreed to put Whittier in to honor kind of that sidewalk criteria program.
What about Plummer Court? It ranks higher.
Plummer Court was not requested for 2020, since it did, in the initial evaluation, it ranked 3rd. So I'd have to look at my book. It probably in as a request for 2021.
I mean, I wanted to try and chip away and do one street per year and keep it within the overall spending, and so that's why I chose Whittier. So, I mean, I could have just as easily not had any of them, because I do question some of the places we put sidewalk in, but this council has spent a lot of time, and what does happen is the people show up and say they don't want sidewalks. So it's always a challenge. So, but I can tell you. Anyone else? There's a motion and a second to take out the Whittier Drive sidewalk on both sides, $65,000, and take that out of the proposed budget. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. The motion to take that out passes 5.
Let's make, we better be clear about this.
No, this isn't right.
The motion to take that out
What about a
passes
yes
5 to 3.
Right. So a yes vote removes it from the budget. I think Alderperson Erickson would want to change your vote.
Yes, definitely. I misunderstood your. Mine is a yes.
Right. As Alderman Stevenson points out, a yes vote removes it from the budget. Okay? That motion passes 6 to 2. All right? Alderman Erickson or Boyette? Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you. I'm going to attempt to deal with the somewhat what I perceive as non-controversial amendments. I'm going to try. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. I'm going to move on your list. It's capital number 1. I'm going to make a motion to remove $7,200 from the library budget. Line item of replacing library humidifier based on Director Rob's recommendation. So I'm going to make a motion to remove $7,200.
Motion is to decrease $7,200 budget from the Library Capital Facilities Fund.
Second.
That's moved by Alderman Stevenson,
Second.
seconded by Alderman Coons. Alderman Stevenson.
And net effect would be to reduce borrowing by $7,200 and reduce the scope of the project.
All right, thank you. Is there any comments or questions or discussion on that item? It was brought up in budget workshop. Director Rob said that it was okay to take this out. All in favor of that motion, which takes that out of the budget, will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. That motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Mayor. My next amendment would be to capital number 3. During our budget workshop, there was the council was made aware of some incorrect numbers, so I am going to make a motion. You can follow this on page 293 of the mayor's budget. I'm going to make a motion to increase by $25,000 the budget for IS Capital Production, Storage, and Server upgrade, and decrease by $20,000 the IS Capital budget for a Smart Cities initiative. Net effect on that would be adding $5,000 to the capital budget and or the borrowing program, and I would so move. Make a motion now?
There's a motion.
I'm not dealing with 2. Just if the plan is go down the list, that seems more controversial to me, and I don't want to deal with it. Well, not with me initiating it. No.
No, that's fine. Good way to do it. Alderman Stevenson moves to, is there a second?
Second.
Alderman Coons seconds it. This amendment was somewhat requested by myself. There was miscommunication on my part, and it simply puts back $25,000 in the IS capital budget and takes $20,000 out of the IS capital equipment budget for Smart Cities initiative. So there is a motion and a second. I do just want to say that this is kind of our first foray into the smart cities kind of stuff. Communities all over this country are starting to use smart cities technology and innovation to do things better than they've done them in the past. And this money in the smart cities initiative, while I'm okay with lowering it this year to ensure that we get the money in the proper production, storage, and server where we have to have it in order, because that's what it's going to cost to put a new server in. I really strongly believe that we need to start looking at cameras and video for some of our intersections, the utilization of those. Unfortunately, Big Brother is watching, but the simple fact is this: crimes are solved because of cameras in communities, and people, accidents. There's a lot of things that can come out of this. So we're going to be providing fiber around the community so that we can get some cameras in some of these intersections, which will, I think, benefit the entire community as a whole. Alderman Bates?
Yes, Mayor. Would you clarify? I thought Alderman Stevens had more $5,000 more in borrowing, and you said someplace it was coming else from? Someplace else it was coming from?
No, it's just a net that we're adding
just a net
25,000
So it's borrowing.
to one project, and we're taking away 20,000 from
Right,
another
but
project.
5,000 up.
5,000 additional borrowing.
It is an increase of 5,000 to the borrowing. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. That motion also passes 8-0.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move on to capital number 4. I would move to decrease the fire department budget by $32,610. Line item being the capital equipment and the refurbishing and replacement of Squad 32. Chief Clone has fine-tuned those numbers, and which allows us to reduce borrowing by $32,610. Now, so move.
Second.
There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson, seconded by Alderman Boyette. Any comments or questions? Just so folks out there know, there may not be any comments or questions because these were explained during the budget workshops in depth and that. So not that they're just, moving forward. It's that the answers probably were given during the budget workshop. And in this case, Chief Clone and his command staff has determined that they can refurbish the current vehicle and save the city from buying a new vehicle, and in the process saving about $32,000. So thank you for your help with that. All in favor of the motion will vote aye. All opposed will vote no, using the roll call machine, please. That motion also passes 8-0.
I'll move on to capital item 8. I'm going to move to reduce borrowing by $21,000. The council had previously taken action to fund the voting machines, the Badger Books voting machines, via reserves, and the budget included borrowed dollars to fund that. So my motion will be to simply fund that with borrowed dollars and remove $21,000 of general obligation borrowing. I would make that motion.
There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Erickson. Comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no, using the roll call machine, please. That motion also passes 8-0.
Okay, Mayor, I'm moving on to the second page of the suggested amendments, or not suggested, identified amendments.
Okay.
I'm going to deal with item 1. We talked about a error in numbers on page 252 for the Abbey Avenue construction. The budget listed $200,000 to do that project. We're going to need $250,000. Due to our status and as close as we are to the borrowed dollars, I'm going to make a motion to increase the budget by $250,000 by $50,000 to take it to $250,000 and fund that additional $50,000 with reserves from our street fund. I'll make that motion.
Alderman Stevenson moves.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Bates. So this motion just fixes something that was inadvertently listed wrong in the budget. Cost to do this upgrade is going to be $250,000. If we are going to do it, we need the $250,000.
And responsibly uses our fund balances in
And
the
it
streets.
uses fund balance. I could ask Director Easker where we currently are right now. We just saved some money, but before this action.
For this action, we are currently under the $10 million borrowing cap by $156,600 before this action.
So depending upon what happens after this, right now you don't really need, you wouldn't have to use public infrastructure dollars.
And if everything ended right now, that would be correct. We'd still.
I just point that
Yep.
out. I mean, the motion
also-
is to use public infrastructure dollars.
Correct.
The reserves, I'm sorry. Yep. Anyone else? All in favor of Alderman Stevenson's motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. That motion also passes 8-0.
My second to last motion will be item 2 on the second page. And in the police budget, we identified $80,000 to replace the tile floor. The Chief Olson came back with some much nicer numbers. And so I'm going to allow him $31,000. His quote was $30,472. I'm going to make a motion to remove $49,000 and leave $31,000, Chief, in your floor budget. So my motion would be to reduce the scope of the project to $31,000 and reduce borrowing by $49,000.
Alderman Stevenson moves to reduce in the police facilities, police station, the item to replace the floor tile. There's a motion by Stevenson, seconded by Alderman Bates. I will tell you that they've done a lot of work on firming up these numbers. It simply came down to a warranty or lifespan number of years, and everyone agrees that that this is adequate dollars to fund both the aisle in the police department and in the community room within the police department. So, so the motion is to, as outlined by Alderman Stevenson, all in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes 8-0.
My last motion didn't make the list because we received additional information from Chief Clone on the fire department budget yesterday at 2:29 via email. The capital budget for the fire department included $12,000 for a replacement of a hot water heater, and the budget number that Chief Clone shared with us yesterday has that amount at $10,000. So I'm going to make a motion to reduce the scope of that project from $12,000 to $10,000 and reduce borrowing by $2,000.
Alderman Stevenson moves. Alderman Stevenson moves, seconded by Alderman Bates. Is there any discussion or questions on that item? Being none, all those in favor of that motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. The motion passes 8-0.
I think that's enough for me for right now.
Right. Alderman Stevenson,
What about number 1?
Director.
Number 1, which one? Which number?
Well,
Under capital?
That came from Alderperson Spellman.
No, under capital.
We took care of that with the first one.
did that.
That was my first motion.
The library humidifier, sure. Okay, since Alderman Stevenson's done, Director Hayes, or Director Easker, can you give us an update on capital?
Including the reduction that was just approved. We are at $207,680 underneath the $10 million cap.
Is that what you have, Chris? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Andy, what do you have?
Wake him up.
Okay, who else would, at this time, like to, Alderman Erickson or Boyette?
Sure.
Go ahead, Alderman Boyette.
Well, you made the motion in committee.
Okay, go ahead. Alderman Erickson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mira. I'd like to increase, item number 2 is a potential budget amendment which would increase by an undetermined amount. And I did get the information from Director Kading that the cost that he estimates for removing the tennis courts at Doty Park to be between $20,000 and $30,000 and replace it with undeveloped or to remain undeveloped with planted grass until that is developed in 2023. At this point, just for everybody, the tennis court...
Make the motion first, and we'll get a second, and then get on the floor, okay?
Sounds
so Alderman Erickson moves. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Alderman Boyette.
The amount?
And the amount, what amount would you like?
I'm going to put in $20,000.
$20,000 to add on to the budget to
to
tear out the tennis courts and plant
replace
grass.
with grass.
Okay.
Okay. Alderman Erickson moves to add $20,000 to the budget to take the tennis courts, the Doty Park tennis courts out and replace it with undeveloped planted grass until it comes up in the projected to come up in 2023 in the CIP.
That's correct.
Okay. There's a second by Alderman Boyette. Alderman Erickson, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I'd like to do this is that the tennis courts have fallen into disrepair. And anybody that visits Doty Park to take pictures for weddings, to visit Doty Cabin, the first thing that they see are these tennis courts that, in my mind, being a former tennis player, are not usable. I know that they use them, but there's grass growing in between the pavement, and they are not in good repair. I had asked Director Kading today how many people during the summer use them for lessons, and he said that there are 2 sessions of lessons, and he thought that there were between 8 to 10 students that took lessons there in the summer. There are lessons that are offered at the Green Park, at Southview Park, at Ivy Williams Park. People on the island can use the tennis courts at Smith Park, although it's not within the city. All parks are open to all people. So people on the island can use the tennis courts there. Until we get to the point where we're going to do something, I don't think we should maintain courts that are in that much of disrepair.
Okay, thank you. Joey, tomorrow her microphone's a little funky, you know.
Mine doesn't have that thing on.
Oh, okay, so her microphone needs a little something checked on tomorrow, please. Okay, thanks. Alderman Bates?
I had buzzed in before this was a different topic.
Okay. Then we will move on to Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, being on the Park and Rec Commission, I appreciate any opportunity to make our parks look nicer. But also being on Park and Rec, we work really hard, I think. I think that commission works really hard to try to do the most we can for our parks in spending the least amount of money. And parks are expensive. But if we look really closely at, say, playground equipment at Southview or at Quarry Park, we'd find older equipment and things there. I could see at some point if we want to try to move this up in the CIP budget to get to it sooner, that makes sense. To spend money, to take this down, to put it back up a couple years later, to me, isn't the best use of dollars in what we try to do try to look at so tightly in Park and Rec. I just think it's just not the best use. If, again, we want to move it up in CIP, maybe that's something we can discuss and look at. I'm not saying the courts don't need to have some work done on them, but there's so many things that need work done on them. I think as the mayor has gone through the budget, there's so many things, just trying to maintain what we have is work. And so I think we need to pick our battles as best we can, and I don't think this is one of them.
All right, thank you very much. Alderman Steele.
Well, one of my questions was just how many people are still using the courts, even if they are in disrepair. So that's been answered. I guess I'm struggling with spending the money to replace them at this point. I could support that. And I guess one of my questions going forward would be, is there still a need for more tennis courts? We remove these. So I will support removing what sounds like an eyesore, but I guess I would some further consideration of whether more tennis courts are then needed. And
Okay, thank you. Alderman Lundrum.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just call up Director Kading real quick? Really quick question. I promise it's easy.
All right.
I'll ask as you're walking.
Director Kading, you'll look happy, please.
I'm looking happy. Happy to be here. Thank you.
I didn't ask you to look happy, did I? It was him. Can I just, it's a lot of money just to do this, I think, but can you just reassure us that you could go in and somehow do some sort of patching and get rid of some of the long, shaggy grass? Even I know how to use Quickcrete now to fix cracks in my garage floor, so I could help you.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the record, you know.
I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that.
Volunteered, hired to do the job next summer, right?
No, it has to be volunteer. It can't be hired.
Director Kading.
To put dollars and cents into the courts at Doty would be not wise. I don't want to recommend that we color coat them, we seal coat them, we come in and crack seal them and make them all pretty again. I think that just extends a problem that we have. Alderman Erickson is absolutely correct. They're an eyesore. They're not pretty. Are they functional right now? They're functional, but they're not. They're not brand new like Washington Park. So it's a delicate balance between getting them to work until 2023 when we propose to come in, remove them, and reconstruct them and make them new, fresh, with fresh fencing and all that. So I wouldn't make the recommendation to do the patch. I just don't think that's a wise use of resources at this time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Great, thank you for your question. Alderman Erickson, you have anything?
Yes, just as a follow-up to Alderman Steele, the money that we would spend on this would be money that we would save in 2023 because the courts would have to come out then. So it's not that we're spending money and then having to spend it again, because the courts do have to come out. When Ivy Williams courts were taken out, the entire structure, or the entire court had to come out in order to put it back in. So.
All right. Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with Alderperson Kuntz's comments. I think to do a single scope project to the tune of $20,000 to remove an asset, when in 2 or 3 years we may be removing that same asset and replacing it, and we could use the existing concrete maybe as the base or some other thing. I think I recognize the aesthetics. From a project management and dollar expenditure, we would be best, Alderperson Kuntz, let's identify the scope of the project we want to do there and then fund it completely.
And anyone else? All right. See no one else. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. That motion does not pass by a vote of 5 noes, 3 ayes. All right. Is there, who else would like to do a motion? There are some motions that are left from, that were identified in the workshop, or any other motion. Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 5, potential budget amendment, increasing by $70,000 the budget for street upgrade city initiative for Lakeshore Avenue to allow for other options to be selected. to be funded by use of $70,000 of public infrastructure reserves. And if we find out that we are way under our borrowing and you don't want to use reserves, I could see that as a future change. And I so move.
Alderman Bates moves to increase the budget by $70,000, street upgrades city initiated for Lakeshore Avenue, to be funded by use of $70,000 of public infrastructure reserves. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Lang. Discussion. Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm okay. I think we've discussed it, as Alderman Kuhn says, we discussed it in that.
Okay.
Other than some of the pictures didn't depict any of the traffic, and I have other pictures that show how much traffic we do get down that street.
All right, Alderman Erickson.
When I first selected that, it was for another topic, so I'm going to remove my.
Okay. Alderman Boyette.
So my question, I guess, is this. You want to increase it by 70,000, which is good. I get it why. And that would also cover any of the plans that are being suggested, correct? So what happens to the extra money if we use a lesser plan?
Goes into the reserves, I presume.
It would. Again, we are moving it. Typically, what the city has done is whatever capital budget has been approved
Stays in the reserve.
In November, because in recent years we have been borrowing shortly after the beginning of the year, there has really not been an impetus to change the budget that had just been approved 2 months prior. But that's a custom, not necessarily a hard and fast rule. It could be that if this was approved, but subsequent to this, but before we got to the budget, or before we got to the borrowing, the council decided to change course and not go to that option and not need the money. We could either pull back and not borrow that money, or, as the mayor said, if we did borrow the money and you decided later to not use it, it would end up in our street reserve.
So if we were to vote yes on this, this is not voting on a plan per se. It's just voting to have the additional money there to cover any of the plans that are chosen.
That is my understanding, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Bates?
Thank you. Yes, and if it is, as I have it stated here, we're taking it from the reserves. If we don't go to the highest one, it just doesn't come out of the reserves. So it's not, doesn't have to change anything. We're just pulling out what we need for the project.
Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm concerned about how we're addressing this. I know this came up in workshop, what this meant from a budget, if this decided how the road would be done. And I'm hoping it will. The way I would look at it is whether this passes or fails should be the clear indication of what the council wants to do, and we should move on that. We have a short period of time. Jerry, Director Kaiser, how quick would you need to know what kind of road, what you're going to put in to be able to put all your engineering stuff together to get a bid out by the first of the year when we get the best pricing?
Honestly, I don't see any way possible to have all the information we need to get a bid out by the first of the year. I'm looking to get bids out in February if possible.
All right.
So we'd need to move on a design solution quickly.
See, and what I'm trying to avoid is this has been discussed probably at least a handful of times. It's been in the budget probably a handful of times. It's gone on for a decade. I don't want to do it over and over and over again. We do this, then we have a whole other debate about what it should be again. I think if the council votes for the additional money, it's clear what the council is asking for, and that is a separate trail. If the council votes against it, that's fine. Then the council is saying, nope, go with a 24-foot. And to me, that is pretty clear. I'm hoping we've done things pretty well here. We disagree on things, and that's great. We have great discussions. But at the end of the day, we listen to each other, and we move forward in a collective manner. I've been on the losing end on many votes, but that's how it goes, and I move on, and I accept that, and we go together as a strong community, and we come together and we move forward. So I'm hoping we had this debate once here today, and we don't continue this on.
Alderman Lindrum.
Thank you, Mayor. If we put this back into the budget, that would mean you would send it back to Public Services and Safety, and we'd have the debate all over again. So to me, this is a very clear indication of what you want to vote for. Just picture that going back, rehashing that over and over and over again, and that's what's going to happen because it'll never end. Thank you.
Other members, Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I would agree with Alderperson Coons and Alderperson Lindrum. And I may have led the discussion in the workshop to conclude otherwise, but I think the council needs to be clear in this direction, and we can put off the final decision all we want, but at some point this council's got to make a decision, and so I'll tell you why I'm going to vote the way I'm going to. I'm going to vote against the amendment because I think this Lakeshore Drive environment is truly unique in the Fox cities. There's no other place, and you've all said it. There's no other place like it. We have slow speeds, lots of people. That's what we want. Slow speeds, lots of people, no accidents. We have neighbors who are inviting people down to the lake to utilize their lawn to get as close to the lake as they want to. Why limit them to a path? So, and I'm still convinced that the uniqueness of this area and the trees and the ambiance and the setting and the view make it what it is. And so I think we can do everything we want with it with the current plan that's in the budget. We can do everything. People can get to the lake. They can see it. They can walk up to it. They can walk away from it. They can get to the Kimberly Point if that's what they want to do. Why do we want to put more concrete down? So that's just my thought, and I totally respect the council's individual perceptions on this because it is truly a unique situation.
Alderman Boyette.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little confused because I keep hearing that there's 4 plans out there and we haven't decided on a plan yet. And I don't know the process, I guess, at this point. Where does this go to determine one of the 4 plans?
Well, it's good.
Because if it's already been to the committee and now it's come to us
back.
and we're just approving the financing for it, then where does it go to get the one out of the 4 plans decided?
Jerry or Jim, would you like to answer that question?
It would go back to Public Services and Safety Committee to review the 4 plans and make a recommendation to council which plan should be accepted.
So Public Service and Safety would pretty much decide which plan and then
come back to the council, though.
Yeah, and then suggest their findings to the full council.
Yeah, what I perceive the budget amendment here is to provide enough money to cover all 4 plans and cost.
Right.
And if the council selects a plan that's less costly, there would be surplus then.
And if this were to go back to Public Service and Safety, would there be more public input?
There's always whenever there's a committee meeting and there's items on there, there's always a chance for public input.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Alderman Lang.
I would actually like to see it come back to committee, and I'm on that committee, so I know that's kind of a surprise. But I would like to continue this discussion about the options that have been put before us. I guess, part of this discussion has been about trees, and according to the plans within the memo that we received, the trees that would be removed, according to the mayor's recommendation, are a higher number of trees that would be than would be removed for an off-street trail. So, are we truly thinking this through? According to the memo, we need to have drainage. Yeah, of course we do, in order to make a road that lasts. So that's definitely, we need to do that. We can't have a lack of a curb and gutter or rolled curb and gutter, so that's important. One of the things, too, that according to Jerry's memo, traffic counts show a volume of 900 vehicles per day. That's a huge amount of traffic on that street. And it strikes me as odd that we would, I'm sorry, but think that people should be walking on a street with 900 cars that are traveling on it. I want to have more discussion on this, not less. And I think, historically, there's nobody in Neenah who likes Neenah history more than I do. The Lakeshore Path was set in place by Helen Kimberly Stewart with the thought that this community would have public access. And that was in the 1930s. Is this the kind of public access we want? Walking on the streets? I'm not sure. I feel like I need to think about this and really examine what the options are. And as far as ambiance, for one thing, I don't think the trees, yes, the trees are beautiful. And according to this plan, the mayor's plan cuts down more trees than an off-street trail. So right there, I'm confused. I read the memo. I have it right in front of me, and that's what it indicates. So I'm confused about that. And I don't feel like I'm ready to say, yep, I want to go with the mayor's plan. I want to be able to look at all of the options very carefully and with history in mind. Clearly, I love Neenah's history. I love the Lakeshore Path, the road, and the ambiance. But I think that we need to consider this more carefully, and that's why I would like to be voting in favor of funding all the options under consideration so that we can invite the community again and talk this through.
Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I disagree with the city attorney. I don't think it has to go back to committee. If the council, to me, there's a couple of choices here. It's 4. It looks pretty, but the reality is we have the mayor's option. The only option there that has a separate trail is only one. It's not 2. It's just one that has a separate trail. The other one's a 10-foot one connected by a cement thing. There's only one. That's the 8-foot wide, 17-foot wide road. It's a foot wider than what the mayor's proposing, from this idea that just more concrete or more whatever just isn't true. The fact that we're going to save trees or whatever trees, isn't true either. Almost all these plans are about the same. We can have this discussion further, but it's not a discussion. It's not a logical discussion. It's an emotional discussion, and we can continue to have this emotional discussion for years. I remember sitting in this council way before I was even on the council, before I was on the council, and having this big old debate about the exact same thing. And it wasn't the first time, and it wasn't the last time. I don't think anything gets gained. We'll throw all kinds of different issues out, but the reality is people want change. You think about it. Why has this not come up in the budget for so many years? Mayors have notoriously stayed away from it. We've taken it out of budget. Why? Because people knew if we were going to do something on this road, it would mean change. And people didn't want change, so we took it out every single time. That's the reason we haven't dealt with this issue. It's now before us. To say we're going to make it a couple feet wider and stick a line on there is no change at all. And I get why people would who live there would want that. It's lack of change. And if I lived there, I might be doing the exact same thing. It's not, I get it. But, I don't represent District 2 only. I represent the entire city. I never quite got around the whole district thing because I across the street is District 1 for me, literally across my street. It's all together. I love the downtown, which is in District 1. I love all kinds of different areas in the city. And so you're looking at 25,000 people, and yeah, there hasn't been an accident yet. I walk and run and bike on these streets. The number of people looking down at their computers or their little phones is staggering. The number of people doing Pokemon or having their Dairy Queen cone and watching the sun's rise or set while they drive on that street there's a bunch of them. They're not looking at the road. It's a lot of people going both ways on that street. I don't know why you wouldn't put a trail there. I don't see that it changes any huge ambiance or anything else. Again, you're not talking a whole lot more asphalt anywhere. But again, I talked longer than I want on this subject. I'm done. Let's vote for something. Let's move on. The worst thing about change is this slow discussion about it. I've seen it over and over again. We agonize and agonize and agonize. Decisions made and we move on and it never gets talked about again, ever. It's this slow ripping off of the Band-Aid that's just so painful. To me, the $70,000 represents a trail. There's one option that's only on the table that we've been presented with. And I'd say we move forward if that's the case, and if it's not, then it's a 24-foot with a line, and that's okay. That's fine. We'll go with that then. But we move on.
Right, Alderman Lane.
I just wanted to say, I don't think I was on council the last time this discussion came up, so maybe I'm enjoying it more than you are.
I like that.
Well, the good news you're witnessing, this government does things a little bit different than Washington and Madison. I mean, we are civil, we are respectful to each other. We have differences in our thought process and that, but we do treat each other with respect and respect others' opinions and that. So we even laugh a little bit once in a while. So I know when Alderman Stevenson, when I told him I was putting this in, Todd asked if I had a death wish. Because, as pointed out, previous mayors have avoided this, and myself avoided it for some time. But we are now to the point where the engineers and everyone are telling me this road has to be fixed. We have to do something. So I believe I have come up with a solution that is middle of the road. What I like to do is I like to find a way to get to yes in so many of these issues. And while there is no right or wrong on this issue, I think this gets the job done. It satisfies folks on hopefully both sides. I've commented in the paper what a treasure we have in that area, in that road. We utilize it. I think it's people bring talent to the area to see what we have in this great community that we have, and that's one of the places they take them. I've driven it numerous times. We have speeding. We all sit up here and we listen to folks who come here and tell us that their street is the fastest street in the city, and it's every street in the city. No one ever comes and tells us what Lakeshore is the fastest street. And our traffic engineer points out to us that the average speed seems to be about 16.7. If that was a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, I may have different opinion. But when I drive it, I really do see people adhering to the speed limit. They're cognizant, respectful of bikers, skateboarders, walkers, and such. I don't want to see an accident. As in, my other life, I'm an EMT, and I don't want fire have to go out there and any accident. I don't want anyone to get hit. But I think that they can coexist on that street. There has been no history of accidents. I am concerned about the ambiance and things like that. What's a little bit weird to me is that a couple of years ago in the budget, we had an opportunity to put a trail closer to the water at Kimberly Point. I put that in the budget. I put money in the budget to put a trail, a walking trail from Kimberly Point end of it to the other end to get people off the street. I think it's more dangerous for people to be walking as cars are backing up out of those parking stalls at Kimberly Point. And I put money in the budget for a walking trail, and I didn't get much support from Park and Rec, and I didn't get much support from the council. In fact, the council took that $21,000, I believe, out. So I just, there's no right or wrong here. I know where people are on it, and I respect their decision. This wasn't about financial with me. It was just trying to find a solution to get this done and move on. And so I hope that we can, my concept is, and the plan, as I understand it, when we get to the plan of what we're going to do there with the amount of money we have, that plan will come before Public Services and Safety and have to be approved. My concept is that we have a blacktop street and we have a concrete walkway, so there's a clear delineation of what's street, what's walkway. There's been some comments that maybe we can put rumble strips in to let drivers know that that's the walking path. I have visited Oconomowoc. I visited a couple places around the state of Wisconsin who have very similar streets, Lake Okauchee and that. And I think I passed out a picture of somewhere where for years they've coexisted. So I know this individual motion causes heartburn, but I at least had my moment of profiles and courage and decided to put it in the budget and get this finally taken care of one way or the other and get it done. The time is to do it. We got the underground utilities, things like that have to be done. So I respect either way we're going, but that's my comments. Alderman Boyette.
Thank you. I've heard a lot of opinions and I've heard a lot of truth. And, I'm in favor of putting the additional funds in with the understanding that this is going to go before another committee and they're going to choose the plan for development. Because the way this is presented tonight, that's what I believe. I know there are other aldermen that have other ideas and let's just do it and be done with it. But my thought was to just give amount of money so that they would have enough to make the choice that was going to fit and be best choice for everyone involved. So that's all I have to say. It's not that I'm picking a plan. I'm just...
Well, I want to clarify your comments. This will come back to the same people to vote on the same issue. It's going to come back to this council. So nothing's going to change.
Thank you.
So you can send your indication now. Okay. With that, Alderman Bates, you have something else? Go ahead.
Just to remind you that because the average speed is what you mentioned, doesn't mean that's what they are all doing. The speeds were much higher in certain cases, and you only need one or a few speeders to make it dangerous. The other thing is, I would be happy to send it on to a committee of the whole as opposed to going back there since it's going to come back here anyway. What I was interesting is James presented a lot of information to us at the Public Services and Safety that probably didn't get it into the minutes because it was pretty detailed. Something as simple as there's more than 2 cars a day that are going the wrong direction on that street. They're going the wrong way on a one-way street, averaging two a day. 2 of them are garbage trucks, but that's taking those guys out. So there is, and so that was the thing. I would like to see everybody get the information.
That makes sense.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Alderman Steele.
Thank you. I like the idea of bringing it back to the committee of the whole because I think it would be helpful for all of us to sit and talk about these options. I hear the opposition from the people who live on that street. What we don't have represented here are all the many more people who actually use that street. And I understand that it's hard to get community participation in a conversation like this. I guess I would like to see some kind of education of the public, perhaps something in your newsletter, because I think people do read that more than they probably read city meeting minutes, or flyers out on the trail for people who use the trail. But there's many, many more people who use it. It makes me cringe to think of all those children and families out using a street that gets a lot of traffic. And frankly, I don't want to wait for that. And I agree that 16 miles per hour average does not mean that everybody. I think it is an accident. I know what it's like to have small children. They don't lines, they don't follow rules very well. Do erratic movements, and I hate the idea of those being on a roadway.
What else? All right, the motion is by Alderman Bates. The motion would increase the budget by $70,000 for street upgrades, city-initiated Lakeshore Avenue, by the use of funded by the use of $70,000 in additional public infrastructure reserve. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes 6-2. Have this discussion again.
And again.
Just like sidewalk. All righty. Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure who's going to take this one on, so I will. I want to make a motion to amend the street upgrade city initiative borrowing budget by $85,000 for Van Street. In my understanding is that to do a full reconstruction. Is that correct, Barry? To do a full reconstruction.
That's correct.
On Van Street.
The initial project was resurfacing. As we've gotten through design on that, more work is needed than was anticipated.
I'll make that motion.
Alderman Coons moves to increase by $85,000 for street upgrades, city-initiated Van Street.
I'll second that.
Alderman Stevenson seconds it. A motion and a second. Anyone? Alderman Coons? No? Okay.
That would just be from borrowing.
So the funding source is borrowing. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yep. Alderman, or Director Easker, you want to tell us where we are right now?
Sure. If right now we are at underneath the self-imposed cap of $207,680. If this is added, we would be at $122,680 underneath the $10 million.
Right. Thank you. Any comments, Alderman Boyette?
My question was answered. Thank you. I was looking for the funding source.
Okay. Alderman Stevenson?
Thank you, Mayor. I support the addition of the $85,000, and I support it being funded by increased borrowing.
Okay.
Given the numbers Mike just gave us.
And Alderman Steele.
Yes, I'm just. Could I just get a little bit more information about what the money is needed for? I wasn't at.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the initial project was anticipated to be a resurfacing project. As we looked at some of the curb and gutter work, additional curb work that would be needed, the number of lateral cuts that would damage curb, it became more economical actually to look at replacing all of the curb along the street, and we had a few base issues that we want to address while we're out there. So the final tally ended up being around $360,000 for the estimate.
Anyone else? If not, all in favor of the motion to increase $85,000 budget for Van Street, utilizing increased borrowing, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. That motion passes 8-0. Anyone else? Alderman Erickson?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a budget amendment to decrease by $40,000 for the Facilities and Administration Building LED signage message board. Second.
There's a motion and a second to decrease by $40,000 budget for Facilities Administration Building for LED signage message. Any discussion? Alderman Erickson?
The reason I'm taking that out is City Hall is a destination. It's not a street that people typically drive on, so they would not be looking for the messages. People come here because they know what they want to do here. So I think that's money that we can save. I don't think it's money that we need to spend at this time since our budget is very tight. And so I would recommend taking that out.
Alderman Coons?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I'm undecided on this one. In that I think it's a good idea. Although I'd really love to see some. I'd love to see some of this. Maybe we do some of it in the library where we have some of the things and get some information. There's different things we could do. Maybe I'm not sure the exact best place, but I love the idea of more communication and a greater opportunity to connect with people. Whether it's best here or I'm not sure the exact best location. So I'm a little torn about it. I like the idea, but I'm not sure the details have been worked out, not that they're always worked out. So I'll have to figure out in the next 2 minutes.
I'll make some comments in a second. Alderman Boyette?
Yes, I'd just like to make a statement. This is a great idea. However, I think it's more of a want on the want list or the wish list. And to what Alderman Erickson said, this is not a highly traveled area. So what percentage of our citizens would actually utilize it? If we had these type of boards at, potentially all of our bigger parks, I could, and then somehow computer feed it, because I don't understand how all that stuff works, but I could see something like that then in the future. But I tend to agree with Alderman Erickson. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Alderman Bates?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that this might not be the year to do it. I think we need to be more of a study on where to put it, perhaps, and what we want to do. I love the idea of having community information out there. Such events that we put up, those little rolling things up for like the fishing tournament and whatever, to have an outreach to people in the community as you're just driving along. You don't always go onto the city website and look what's going on this week. But if you're driving down to the dentist or whatever and you drive past and you see that there's a bike race around Shattuck School, you could see that. And then what I would suggest for the city here, where we have in the front that like pin board where we put cancellations up, maybe put something that's more and be typed in and just put up there as like our little TV out here to say what meetings have been canceled, or maybe some of the information you put up, like if you want to have a pool pass, it's the 3rd floor. So people have come here, but they have to figure out, okay, where do I go from here? And or when our taxes are due, 1st floor at the end, something like that. So 2 different types of boards.
Anyone else? I would just say that the concept for this, has been thought out and some work has been done by myself. I'm the one who proposed this. Just like the city of Neenah sign on the south part of the city, I don't think we had all the T's crossed and I's dotted on that. And that is a very, very popular sign. And information is just vitally important now. Every church in the city has a message board, Washington Park, the library. The more information we can get out, and we struggle getting it out to these folks. And, they always use the excuse, well, I didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. I didn't know about that sidewalk coming in. So then we react to it. This is an opportunity to figure it out, allow for a small amount of money to figure it out. It doesn't have to be, we've had some discussions since some aldermen have raised a couple concerns. And I kind of agree with them that maybe this building isn't the perfect spot for it. So what I've done is I've went around, I've contacted Associated Bank. I said, hey, would you consider putting it on your property? The most popular message board we have ever had in this city was the end of Wisconsin Avenue on the Gladfelter building. And so maybe there's a possibility of us putting it back there, because every single person in this city read whatever was on that big, it was a big message board that you put the letters on, I think, years ago. So maybe we find a different location for it. I've already brainstormed and thought about, in front of Dairy Queen where the statue is, potentially, other locations up and down Commercial Street. It doesn't have to be here, but I would hate to wait another year if the opportunity presents itself. And the other thing is that talking like guys like Pat Fisher today and Mike, a lot of people come here looking for information. We have done a wonderful job of increasing our social media visibility, our other information, putting up the message board up there. Day in, day out, we see people standing there reading the scrolling messages to find out what's going on. I think a smaller version or something, telling people when taxes are due, when, 4 times a year they're due, so reminding people that come to City Hall that this is going on, the ability to promote our park and rec programs and sign up for pool passes and things like that. There's so many uses you could get out of these things, and everyone's doing them. Every bar, every restaurant, Gill Liquor, everyone, the churches, all our churches have them. And so this is a tool, technology that we can use, and I do agree that on this building, maybe it's not the best usage. So I would prefer that we keep something in, and then we explore where we can do it earlier, later this spring, on other possibilities to put it in the city and still be able to get our messages out to the community. Anyone else? Being no one else, Alderman Erickson moved to decrease the budget. Mike, where are we right now?
The budget before any action on the message boards would be, we have $122,680 available to borrow under 10 million.
100 what?
122,680.
122,680. We're still $122,680 underneath the borrowing limit. So, and I would take some exception. Everything in the budget is a wish list or a want. I mean, all priorities. And if this isn't a high enough priority, that's fine. But I think we're missing the boat for the future. But it's not a huge item. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no, using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes to take it out 5-3. Is there any other motions? Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to amend the budget to decrease it by $60,000 for facilities and parks and recreation, the dog park, at this time.
Second.
Go ahead. Motion by Alderman Erickson, seconded by who? Seconded by?
Yes.
Boyette, seconds. Session, Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. This past weekend, I visited the Outagamie County Dog Park and the Winnebago County Dog Park. Both dog parks are about 10 acres. Both of them have areas for large dogs and small dogs. Both have a fenced area. They have porta potties, not necessarily bathrooms. And what was interesting is that they also are supported by a group of people who are volunteers. And it seems that they have an advisory committee for their dog parks. So I love dogs as much as anybody. I have a dog, but I would recommend putting this into the Park and Rec Commission and having them do a study before it comes back to us. having a plan. And I've looked at other plans from other cities throughout the city. Before they budgeted the dollars, they had a plan. This is what we want to do. This is how much the fencing's going to cost, the water's going to cost, the trees are going to cost, the trail is going to cost. And so we need to determine the site. We need to have some volunteers. We need to have a fundraising source. And I think it may be a good idea, but I think it needs to go to be developed before we allocate the money for this.
Alderman Coons.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is kind of like the garbage trucks. I think the mayor is just ahead of his time here, just slightly. I think it's a good idea. Like I say, I think a lot of people are very interested in it. But yeah, concerned about size and all these other pieces. Plus, I think that regional approach. The county's been working on this for like over a decade, and I don't know what their problem is, but they somehow can't seem to get the dog park with all the different land options they have. But if we're going to do something here, I'd love to see them involved in that financially and otherwise, plus other groups and who that's going to be. And there's just a lot of things. I think it's a great idea, but if done wrong, it can become a detriment in that, you have some dogs that get injured because you got big dogs and small dogs in too small of an area and not enough room and all those other kind of things. I think it's a great idea. And if we can work out the details within 2020, I will help find money in the carry forwards. There's enough there to make this work. And if we can come together with that, I would support it with greater detail and greater maybe regional support. So I look at that option still happen this year, but I don't see borrowing for it on the off chance that all those things come together. But I do think I understand exactly why the mayor put it in here in the budget.
Alderman Boyette.
I ditto both of their statements. I actually was going to just say that the locations that we were given for potential sites for this aren't even part of a plan. They're suggestive, and I guess I'd rather have a little bit more something concrete than just we need this money and we need to borrow it and put it here because we're going to do something, but we're not sure what yet, and then plan after the fact. And that's all I'm going to say.
Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think. Well, first of all, I've seen the responses that the mayor has referred to on repeated occasions where the number one issue he gets requests about is a dog park, and I don't think there's the Alderperson Coons and I guess the others who are questioning the dollar amount. I don't think it's viable to create a dog park with $60,000. So, I mean, if our intent was to fund the thing, we'd have to put in a lot more than $60,000. So this tells Winnebago County that we're going to put money in our budget. We're serious about it to the tune of this. So let's see what kind of regional approach we can have to put it together. My dog died, so I don't walk my dog anymore. So this isn't going to affect me. But I think this is Alderperson Coons says the mayor's it's kind of like garbage cans. Well, ultimately we got there, and so we got there by planting seeds, and this plants the seed, and it meets the number one constituent communicated desire for $60,000, and tells them we're serious about it, and let's roll up our sleeves, get a plan, get a budget, figure out how much we're going to have to fundraise, how much corporate sponsors we may need, whatever else we're going to do with it, because our contribution is to be $60,000. So I'm going to support it.
Alderman Erickson?
I just have a suggestion that if we have so many people who are interested in a dog park, possibly that you could offer to have a citizens advisory committee on putting this together and to see what the opinions of the people of the city of Neenah would like and where they'd like it and what they'd like to see. Other communities have done that where they've got a group of citizens together who are interested in this, and they participate and they become the initiative for fundraising and volunteerism at the park as opposed to just having it be led by the city.
Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. I could see this as something that we're always asking the other communities to help us with Fresh Air Park. Is there a way to approach the county and say, we're ready, if you have it within distance from our residents and it's still in the county, we could help you out with it so that it could be a bigger area with areas for, as you said, multiple types of dogs, different fencing, and parking, because we all know that everybody drives their dog out to get there.
All right, Alderman Koontz.
Just quickly, I think, as I said, I think when you put something in the budget, whether it gets taken out or not, like garbage trucks, I think it does send a message of priorities. And just having it in the budget, whether it survives or not, is a statement I think moves us forward. So I think that part's good. And I guess, I could support this if we were going, look, we want to put some money aside to help support a regional dog park that probably won't be in the city limits, but will be in the county and help support that. I'd probably be in favor of that. I have a hard time seeing how it trying to fit something that large within the city. We don't have that kind of space. If we did, I mean, we don't have 20, we have 20 home sites. I mean, we're struggling to find that and expand there. That's my concern, but I never thought of it from the standpoint of, hey, here's some money that we want to put in for a regional one in with the county, and that's interesting.
Alderman Boyette.
I just wonder how detrimental this would be to this idea and plan if we pushed it back a year, when we have our plan and we have more of an idea of how much money it's going to cost, and if we have this committee and potential fundraising and et cetera, and we have more of a idea of a location.
Well, no one has stepped up to do any of this up to this point. So the budget is a opportunity for the mayor to put his priorities forward, and this is a priority of this community. 2013-14 survey by Neenah Park and Recs. This was, archery range was 50% of the people said community center, 48%. I've considered putting a community center in there because there's a lot of people who believe that we need our own senior center or community center, but the dollars weren't there. A lot of time and effort has been put into this. There are plans. Kimberly Clark has talked to me today. There's a location, corner of Bird and Brooks Street, which is a perfect location for a dog park. Around this country, in big cities, they don't have 10-acre dog parks. They got 1-acre dog parks in Philadelphia, and I think Jane showed me pictures of some very small dog parks because in big cities, they don't have the opportunities for, and we don't have 10 acres within the city sitting around. I suppose we could do it in the land that we have in the industrial park. We have some land out there, but it's got to be accessible. So this is a priority for the community. I hear it all the time. And I think the community is going to be disappointed by the message this is going to send by not doing this. No, we don't have everything figured out because we don't know what kind of mess. Kimberly Clark right now is trying to figure out what they're going to do. They're going to divest their properties. They're going to either sell them, give them away. They read in the paper tomorrow that you took the money out. Why would they even consider anymore giving us that property for the usage of that? So I think it sends a terrible message for the future. This is something that the citizens of the city want. I'm not saying that that's got to be the place, but we also had a lot of work done. Pat Fisher did fencing, benches, open air concept, gazebo. So, I mean, nothing's in ink yet as far as what we're going to do. But when you approve this, that starts the process of coming up with a plan. Because then it's in the budget, it's proposed, and then it's our job to figure out the details. We don't always have to have the details worked out ahead of time before. And quite honestly, in a couple of my proposals in the years, I had the details worked out, and some people didn't like the details. So I'm giving the council the opportunity to come up with a plan. but first you got to fund it. And you don't spend the money if you don't have a good plan. But if you don't put the money in there, it's going to sit for another year. And I will tell you this, Winnebago County just passed their budget 2 weeks ago, and there is no money for a dog park in there. I talked to Mark Harris, as I've been being told by people there's going to be one in the village of Fox Crossing. It's a done deal. I talked to Rob Way. Yeah, there's a piece of land that has been identified for a potential dog park in the Fox Crossing. But there is no money to do it, and Fox Crossing ain't putting any money in to do it. So unless we put some money to get the ball rolling so that a group comes up, but even a group, they had 2 or 3, 4 years ago, they had a Friends of the Dog Park group that came up. They raised $1,000, unfortunately, and they never got off the ground. I think with the seed money from the city, we could get some of the things that Alderman Erickson points out about someone to manage it and look it over. I'm not saying where it's got to go. Director Hayes has a site that he feels might be appropriate. I've spoken with the Neenah Foundry for the big green space on the south side of Winneconne Avenue, over the overpass. Dogs might glow a little bit at night, but I don't know if that site is appropriate or not. We'll have to see if it's appropriate to have, dogs running around on that site. But there are other sites. So I don't have it nailed down. I just think that the budget is that opportunity, just like economic development projects. Many, many times, Chris and I do not have all the answers when I put in $500,000 for a potential development downtown. We don't have that ink yet. We don't have all the answers for that. We are getting extremely close to bringing that to fruition. That's kind of where we are here with the dog park. I'm responding to a group of citizens in this community that have continually put that as a high priority for the city of Neenah. And until we put some dollars forward, it will not be a high priority by Park and Recreation either. So I'm putting it forward as a priority item. Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask the Finance Director, would we be able to put a extra fee on dog licenses to help support an ongoing thing? And how many dog licenses do we have? I mean, I don't know how many dogs we have, but how many dog licenses do we sell?
We have a lot more dogs than dog licenses.
See, and that's the thing is, what we need to do is to say, if we're giving this to you and using everybody's money, if you have a dog, step up, please.
Well, people pay for tennis courts and don't play tennis. People pay for baseball fields and don't play baseball. I mean, that's an argument.
If you don't have a dog, you're not going to go to a dog park. You can learn to play tennis.
I get it.
Yeah.
The quick answer to the question is you can make the pet licensing fee anything you want for any reason you want. We raised them $1. They hadn't been raised for 15 years, but if that was some link you want to make, certainly.
And about how many licenses do we sell you?
Give me a second. Thank you.
Andy.
And 12 or 1,300 is the answer.
Well done.
Why is here?
It's kind of showing them up a little bit, but
Mike texted them the answer.
No, I did not.
So anyway, so that's the reason for putting it in, and it's one of those things that I think the time has come, because I don't believe we can count on the county to do it. The county's been putting this off for years and years and years. I think it's kind of a shame that the county has one so down in the southern part and continues to neglect the northern part. So people either have to go to the north side of Appleton or the north side of Oshkosh. So, and I would utilize this money potentially, as Alderman Stevenson points out, to leverage the county and say, hey, we're stepping up to the plate here with some dollars. Now, where's your financial portion of this? Maybe we can do this together. Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. The park is located in the Winnebago County Park area. It is in Winnebago. It is not on the north side of Oshkosh. And it took me 10 minutes to get there. And when I got there, there were 2 cars there in the middle of the afternoon with 3 dogs, and it wasn't hugely popular. I mean,
Alderman Steele.
Well, as a connoisseur of dog parks everywhere, I mark them in my GPS when I go on long road trips. I really think this does send a message that we're serious about this. And I think without taking some step to indicate our seriousness, we're not going to get corporations, county, anybody else to step up. And I don't think we have to have everything completely planned out about how and where extra money is going to come from. I think we can at least start the planning process. I do support. I mean, I don't support taking the money out.
Anyone else? Okay, there is a motion and a second to decrease by $60,000 for facilities, park and recreation, dog park. All in favor, vote aye. An aye vote takes the money out.
Tie.
Aye. Tiebreaker.
Yeah, you're right. So the mayor breaks the tie.
Yeah, mayor gets to
You want to reopen the conference discussion?
Oh. I'm sorry, I voted. Oh, you didn't lock it in yet, did you?
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
No, she didn't.
Well, I didn't close it on Alderman there earlier, so I'm not going to close it on me. So I would like to vote no, please. Good no.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to
He doesn't want to take it out.
I'm a no.
He is no.
Okay. So that motion
Fails. Fails.
fails on a tie vote broken by the mayor. Yeah. All righty. Is there any other motions by members?
One.
Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I sent out an email this morning. I apologize. It took me so long to get it out. My motion to amend will not affect the financial ramifications of the budget, but it will recognize Arrowhead Park and my desire to utilize TIF if it's available. So the budget for 2020 includes $1.4 million in Arrowhead Park being funded by the facilities budget, not in TIF. I would ask that we move $500,000 of that $1.4 million into TIF 10, and then after we get information from Mike Kading regarding the final costs for 2020's expenditures in 2020, and also the updates from Baird as to the actual performance, because TIF 10 is performing not spectacularly, but we have more increment, but the increment was being realized later than we expected. So we're not sure how that's going to flush out. So I would like to move $500,000 from facilities into TIF 10 with a very strong caveat that we review that again once we've got final costs for the project and the final TIF review. I'll make that motion to transfer $500,000 from facilities for Arrowhead Park to the TIF 10 budget.
Second.
There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson, seconded by Alderman Lendrum. Discussion. Alderman Coons?
Thank you, Mayor. A question, if that who this is for, I guess it's for Director Easker, and that is, I assume that, or Hayes for that matter, I assume this would require going to the review board or joint review board, or, I mean, was there some other action that has to take place?
Director Easker?
And we'll move on to Director Hayes as well.
Yeah,
We had an extensive discussion about this, and the current project plan allows for some flexibility because some of the some of the work to be done that Alderman Stevenson is putting into the TIF includes infrastructure, streets. We do have a little bit of money that hasn't been used, that was in the project plan, for parks and beautification. We do have some redevelopment money that theoretically could be used for potential tenant that may be going out there that in theory would create some development opportunities in the future, maybe around the park and so on. But I would prefer that Director Hayes speak specifically about that issue. But based on this, we would not need, from my perspective anyway, to go to the Joint Review Board for this. But I think that would be up to Director Hayes.
And I would agree with Director Easker. If we are cautious and judicious in how we do this, it would not require that we go back to Joint Review Board. It's not $500,000 is a significant amount, but in the picture of the overall TIF plan, it's a small portion.
I just want to get clear. I'm not trying to avoid having to do that. I just wanted to know what that was, and obviously that what we're doing makes sense in the larger scheme of what you've planned for that TIF, which it sounds like it is. So, I just want to make it clear. I'm not trying to somehow avoid having to deal with other groups. Sure. Just understanding what we needed to do.
I think the way we draft those TIF plans, we provide some flexibility with them and within those plans. So some flexibility. What, $10 million on there?
But not $9.4 million.
Correct.
Yep. And just to finish up, I think clearly with this, we would pretty much have maxed out any flexibility we have in the current project plan. And I think, in my mind anyway, clearly any additional money planning to be spent on Arrowhead Park, the city is going to have to take a step back and determine how it's going to fund it, and whether if there's some other potential increment that could be earned possibly on that site through various creative means or whatever. But I think we've pretty much maxed out our ability to TIF anything else on Arrowhead.
Well, and then addressing the caveat here, and that would be that, again, once we get the information from Barry, we look at this we might make a change to this based on that information.
Sure, or to the future phases that we have put in the 5-year plan.
Thank you.
Alderman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for Director Easker again. Does the borrowing from one pocket versus another, does that change on how we might be rated by any?
It would not, but this money would need to be designated for borrowing different. That's why it's so important that if we are going to do this, it would need to go through the budget process and pass that scrutiny to change the purpose, because when we borrow money, we have to be somewhat clear as to what we're borrowing it for and if it is related to a TIF or not.
All right. Any other comments or questions? This does not impact the overall borrowing. Simply. Alderman, good job meeting with staff and that. I potentially identified this as a possibility. Initially, I had some concerns because the pro forma currently shows a very small negative balance, but manageable. And yet we don't know what the future holds for that district. And I'm confident that at some point we're going to see increase in increment valuation. And one of the ways we may get that is by doing some of the roads and the infrastructure and the things that need to be done for Arrowhead Park. So that's why I think this is a good idea from Council President Stevenson. All right. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no on the motion. That motion passes 7 ayes, 1 no. Director Easker, where do we currently sit on CIP, on capital, please?
On capital, we are currently at 9.858 and some change as our borrowing amount. So we're about 162,000 underneath 10 million.
162K?
Yes.
Okay. there any other motions? Alderman Coons.
I'd like to, I don't know if it's a motion, more of a request, and I mean, you can tell me no if I'm out of line here, but one part of what we talked about the budget, part of that was that department heads would make some changes, reductions to operating, and have that information by the end of June. And I voiced in there, and I guess I would just make again, I'm not looking for a formal motion to change, but I guess a personal request, being one of 9 and only one of 9, so I don't have that much power in that request, but that would be that department heads come with those reductions by the end of this year instead of the middle of the next year. So we have a budget and not a Frankenstein budget in which they tell us what they did instead of telling us what we think they're going to do. It's just, to me, that's just how a budget should be done. It's a minor request. If they don't follow that, the sky isn't going to fall. I'm one person. I just throw that out there. We talked about it. I didn't seem to be a whole lot of people excited about it but me, so I'll leave it as a personal request.
Alderman Steele?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to increase the budget for wages and fringe costs for IS to hire a full-time GIS technician by $46,750.
There's a motion by Alderman Steele that's in the operating budget. Is there a second to Alderman Steele's motion?
I'll second it just from a debate standpoint.
Sorry.
Alderman
Yeah.
Steele moves.
Yes.
Seconded by Alderman Coons to increase the budget, $47,000 to fund the GIS technician position that was asked for in the budget. Okay. Director Easker, could you give us an update on where we are on the operating?
Sure. Well, any actions up to this point? Yeah.
Up
we
to
have not
this
touched the
point.
operating budget, so we are still where we were, indicating that the expenditure restraint limit, we are approximately $2,500 under that limit. So any expenditures that would ultimately affect the general fund that are increased above that $2,500 would need to be offset by additional expenditure reductions in the general
Or we
fund.
lose the expenditures.
Or we lose the $530,000+ of it.
Or revenue increases?
No, sir. We
Just
cannot. No,
expenditure.
that's correct. The expenditure, it's a very blunt, hard instrument that they provide for us.
So just so we know that, I mean, I know that there was another alderman who had talked about this too, so just want to be everyone clear on that, and I would call on Alderman Steele.
Actually, I'm sorry. Can you go over that again?
Sure. The state of Wisconsin provides very strict limits to how much you can what percentage you can increase expenditures within your general fund operating budget. The city's general fund operating budget can only increase from 2019 to 2020 by 2.56%. The increase that we have in the budget is literally up to that limit. So any additional spending that would take place in the general fund, which is the IS budget, would need to be charged back to the general fund, would then require, if we're going to meet expenditure restraint, approximately that same amount of money being taken out of expenditures somewhere else within the general fund.
I think I'll have to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Can I do that?
Yep. Second's going to withdraw too. Or you'd have to find that amount of decrease is somewhere else. So, Alderman Bates, did you push your button?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was looking back at the potential capital budget amendments, the number one, which we passed for the $50,000. That was supposedly coming out of reserves at the time. Is that correct?
Say that again.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Just to repeat, item number 1 on the second page with the $50,000 extra for Abbey Avenue.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a motion that instead of we taking it out of reserve, since we have borrowing capability, and this would normally have been a borrowing project, I would move to borrow as opposed to take out of reserves.
That's an allowable motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Boyette. Alderman Boyette.
Oh.
The reason I asked Director Easker where we were, and he stated, what, $160-some thousand, correct, Mike?
Correct.
I was going to bring forward to the council, and I could ask Jerry, but there was, I said we were going to be very aggressive on streets this year, and I think we were able to get in almost all the ones that we had hoped for. I did take out one street in order to get under the limit that I needed to be at, and that was Gillingham Road. So if you look at my notes, I said budget constraints moved to 2021. We're at 162,000. Gillingham Road is in there at 200,000. So it would take another $38,000 worth of reserve, but I would like to just throw that out for the council to consider and ask maybe Jerry if he has any comment on that. But so you can either do that, but then if you did that, Alderman Bates, you wouldn't be able to do what you want to do. I think that is appropriate because that was originally in the budget. I took it out. The only reason I took it out was because of budget constraints. You have now done a good job of getting us closer to that number where feasible, correct, Mike?
Yes.
That we could fund Gillingham Road and get that done too, and not wait another year on Gillingham. So I just throw that out for the council's discretion.
That is a good idea, and I'd like to have that as a motion first, and then if whatever happens with that, then we could go back to mine, which is fine.
Okay.
I don't know how
Okay,
that
how are we
works,
gonna
but
do that?
yeah.
Sounds more and more like Washington every day.
Yeah.
So if someone would like to do that, you could take back your motion that you just stated and the second, and
Fine. Fine.
someone would have to, so we could talk about it.
Yeah.
Are you requesting to withdraw your motion, Alderman?
Yes.
He's withdrawing her
We're
initial
getting into this habit now.
motion, and Alderman Bates is withdrawing the second. Alderman Bates, for discussion purposes, would you like to make the motion to add back in Gillingham Road at $200,000 with the funding coming from the dollars available currently along with reserves to fund that project?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
See, we don't have to
So
change
there's a
it.
motion and a second for discussion purposes. Who would like, anyone like to discuss this? Jerry, what do you think?
Well, I appreciate your bringing that up. I honestly, I had given that up for this year, but I appreciate that coming forward. Rated a 2, asphalt pavement, severe alligator cracking throughout, and I think this would be a good improvement for a heavily used route, both with passenger vehicles and trucks.
Discussion. Alderman Coons.
A couple questions, or a couple. First of all, I'm going to be clear about the motion. We're talking about what, borrowing to the very maximum point and then using the rest of reserves? Is that what?
Borrowing back to approximately where we started.
Right, but again, if the whole 200 goes through, there's going to have to be a funding source that would include both borrowing and reserves.
Yep. Can we
borrowing and
can we specify those two numbers?
Well, my goal would be, I'm always a little hesitant to get so close to the
Yeah, I know, I get
close to
it.
the
I
edge of the cliff here.
Thank you for that analogy.
Yes.
Maybe we could do half and half. If it's costing 200, maybe we could add 100 to borrowing, 100 from reserves.
Where are we at our reserve?
We are spending 141,000, including the 50,000 that was part of.
And what is the reserve at currently?
The estimate is around 3 million, which is a very healthy balance. So
we have
whatever we do here is not significant.
So we have $3 million in that reserve. The finance director tells me it's a very healthy balance. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to go right up to the max either.
I want to establish number, and then I also wanted to ask, what Director Easker say? What happens? We borrow money, and we never end up spending it all because there's always something that stops us from spending it all. And then do we look at that and go, we spent so much money, oh, we still have additional dollars here? Do we go, nope, we spend this money and we didn't use this portion, we're going to sit over here, to sit here and not do anything, and then we're going to use the rest out of reserves? How does that?
Well, I mean,
Or can we be
essentially that
flexible?
is, any street project, if you budgeted and borrowed $500,000 and it cost $450,000, that $50,000 that was borrowed automatically lapses into the perpetual reserve that is the street or public infrastructure reserve. That money does earn interest for the city. That obviously is, and as you have pointed out, probably doesn't equal what it costs us to borrow it. But, prudent budgeting and borrowing indicates you try to budget and borrow at least as much as you think it's going to cost, and hopefully it'll cost less.
And if we did nothing, if we didn't make this change and said, but we want to put Gillingham Road in there, what would happen, we'd go through and we do all this budgeting and we do all these, get the quotes and some things. And of course, every one of these projects typically comes in under, because that's how the way we design it. The road, we budget $325,000 for this road, and the bid comes in at $300,000, which is why we have a $3 million infrastructure fund. I'm just saying, at some point, if we did nothing and put Gillingham Road in there and said, we'll use it out of reserves or out of our borrowing, because it always comes under budget. I'm just trying to avoid always trying to borrow every single dollar that we know we don't spend every single dollar.
True. On the flip side of that, with the equipment, for example, not having borrowed all of that or not having used all that money gave us flexibility to buy the garbage trucks and containers close to a year early before we actually borrowed the money, so we had enough cash flow to cover that. So
again, just trying to use that flexibility.
I'm more of an
for this one, but-
advocate, as the mayor said, to have little funds set aside. There's no, tried and true formula to this specifically.
I support the idea in the street. My only issue is how the best way to fund it, but I'm fine.
Well, Mike, since I'm the person who brought this up, and I know it was just last minute, but I strongly believe the longer we wait on some of these streets, they become more costly next year and things like that. But we could theoretically say we're going to put in $100,000 for Gillingham and see where the bids come in. All the bids come in, and if we're able to do it through savings, we do it, and if we can't, or we take it out of reserves and make that decision later. That's an option too, correct?
It would be a little, a little, not consistent with the way we would normally do this, which would be, here's how much the Public Works Department thinks it's going to cost, and here's how we would intend to fund it. We can always adjust on the fly later. Sure.
So, just to be clear, the motion that Alderman Bates agreed to do would be for $200,000 for Gillingham Road, funded by $100,000 of borrowing and $100,000 of reserve. Is that okay with the people who did the motion in second? Alderman Bates? Okay, so that would be their motion. Anyone else? Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you. Still a little bit surprised by the request. Just because you have a $10 million cap doesn't mean that the people in Madison really know what the hell they're doing down there by limiting us to $10 million. Is that the state of Wisconsin?
It is not. It's a SEC.
Okay, so I apologize to those people in Madison who are just Okay, so just because the SEC or whoever tells us we
it's
have
more
10
of a federal issue than it is state.
Even better. Just because the federal government tells us we can borrow up to $10 million doesn't mean it becomes a goal. And we're running real quick to Gillingham here. No one's talked about the $20,000 for the sanitary sewer. Right? You got $20,000 in sanitary sewer, according to your sheet here, Jerry.
Probably storm sewer.
Storm sewer. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Storm sewer. So regardless, if the project is that bad and we've got $3 million in our war chest to fund it, then let's fund it responsibly through money we've already borrowed, and not go out there and max out at $10 million of borrowing. That surprises me, and there's no way I'll support that.
Well, we can borrow more. We can borrow.
And we can tax beyond expenditure restraint too if we want to lose money.
All right.
Matter of fact, I'm going to move to amend the motion, amend the amendment by saying I'm supportive of the project funded all other reserves.
I'll second that.
Yes.
There's a motion, an amendment to,
Yeah, I'm up on top there.
to amend the motion that the funding source would all be out of reserves. Is there a second by Alderman Kuhn?
I second.
Alderman Kuhn second. Alderman Bates?
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, I'll ask the city finance director, it's still not going to affect, we're still healthy balance.
Yes, ma'am.
And so this would have normally been a project that would have been under our borrowing.
Correct.
So I could have gone either way. If you feel that strongly about it, I will defer to President Stevens.
Anyone else? Yeah, and I'm just going to say this. My goal is not to go to the max, what we think is allowable number. That was a goal because of the borrowing restrictions that Mike makes me aware of at that $10 million number. I think we have an opportunity to take care of a street that was suggested by staff, and it just didn't fit into our borrowing plan. It's rated very high. I did look at it and said, I think it could last another year. We could get by with one more year by waiting. So it's not something that I feel has to be done. It was just an opportunity because we did a good job of saving some additional dollars before. But if we'd like to do that so that we don't, fall behind, I was very forthright when I started this budget saying that we're going to concentrate on streets. And I think we did a good job of next year of putting a pretty aggressive street project together and infrastructure. So that's why I just thought of it as we're sitting here, see if the council is interested in considering it. Anyone else? Alderman Bates, do you have anything? Okay. All in favor of Alderman Stevenson's motion to include Gillingham Road in the amendment to include by the use of $200,000 of reserve will vote aye. All opposed will vote no using the roll call machine. That motion passes 8-0. That becomes the motion then. To fund Gillingham Road with $200,000 of reserve. The 2020 budget. Is there any other discussion? Yeah, that's what that becomes the. That's right. Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor of that motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no using the roll call machine, please. That motion passes 8-0. Is there any other motions? All right. Seeing no other motions. Mike, why don't you just give us a recap where we're at before we do the...
Sure. We, if no other motions are made, we end the night $19,102,026 as the total levy, assessed rate $8.1936. We will estimate our borrowing for capital projects $9,858,320, leaving us under the 10 million by 162,680. $200,000 used of general fund reserves to support the budget. Still still have $2,500 under the expenditure restraint, and we would be using $341,000 of infrastructure street reserves to fund everything. 341,000.
41, leaving a balance of approximately what?
Yeah, well, again, an estimated balance of 2.7, but we do not know, we do not have factored in what our 2019 projects are going to impact that rate. Yeah.
Okay.
$8.19.36 cents.
It's a number on here.
Yep, it's the number that's on the green sheet.
Nothing has changed in the, nothing has changed in the operating.
This sheet is exactly the same as.
The operating did not change.
I heard 90.
Just the capital. Okay, so that's where we're at. I'll ask one more time if there's any motions. If not, I would consider a motion to adopt resolution number.
It's already on the table. It's been amended. It's been amended 1,000 times.
Oh, okay. It's already on the table.
Move
Sorry.
to adjourn.
We have to vote on the as amended. So all in favor of that motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Using the roll call machine, please. The motion as amended, Alderman Stevens and Bates. That motion passes 8-0. Alderman Stevenson.
Just a quick thank you to all the staff members for all the work you guys did putting this together and your patience while we debated it. And I'd like to congratulate the public who have stayed around to listen to this.
Out of respect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I too, just very quickly, so we don't have to do it at the end. There's a lot of hard work put into this by staff, council, and finance put a lot of hard work into it, all the department heads. And I too, this is the sixth budget, and they don't get any easier. And I appreciate the changes and the thought process that was put in by the council members. There again, we do it civilly, we respect people's decisions, and we move on. Christopher says you vote, and you move on to the next item. And it's all good intentions, and we're trying to do what's best for the community, trying to set up this community for the future. I think this budget, if you look at the overall, what it does exactly that. It's a responsible, fiscally responsible document that's going to bring dividends for this community down the road. So I appreciate everyone taking the time that they did to do this. It's been a long process and a long road, and it's not getting any easier, but we will do it again next. So.
God willing.
There is a motion on the floor to adopt resolution number.
Look at that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead. I was thinking we were doing Todd's. Is there any?
Can I move to adjourn?
Is there any?
Second.
I said this has been a really long project. Is there any other budget matters that legally can come before the council? So tomorrow night it's been noticed that the possibility, we always leave that open in case we don't finish tonight, and if there's something that's laying out there, so that will be canceled, but the council meeting will be happening tomorrow at 7 p.m.
6 o'clock, we have public service and safety.
There's a 6 o'clock pre-meeting.
6 o'clock is a public services committee meeting, and then we also have a 6:45, I believe. No, we don't. That's in December. Okay, so 6 o'clock is a committee meeting.
Is the Champions thing tomorrow as well?
And the Champion, the Champion Sports Center is tomorrow, ribbon cutting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned. Thank you.
I did my own.
Okay.
Broadcasts of the City of Neenah Common Council meetings are produced by University Studios of the University of Wisconsin Fox Valley. Neenah residents can get information about City Council meetings, City Committee meetings, meeting agendas, and other documents via the City website, www.neenahgov.org. Neenah residents can express their opinions about city issues or about these broadcasts by contacting the mayor's office, contacting their city alderman, or by completing the electronic feedback form on the city website, www.neenahgov.org. All public portions of the meetings are recorded in entirety and are not edited for playback.